Hello, everybody, and welcome to the finale of my sports business and broadcast Zooms meeting. It has been a great pleasure to be hosting all these meetings for over 3 months plus, and the shout out goes to all of you, which I'll talk about in just a moment, for being with me and learning and connecting with everybody and sharing your experiences with one another over these difficult times. In my final presentation of this spring and summer series, we'll talk about a few things that you see on the screen today. Number one, how our jobs will change and are changing as some sports are returning, and how we will adjust to the new environment at our respective workplaces. We'll also discuss applying for future jobs, maybe altering your career plan a little bit and reworking some of your short-term goals while keeping those long-term goals in the mirror. We'll also talk about the challenge for yourself on your future broadcasts, how you are going to bolster your performances on your next show, on your next newspaper article, or if you're a behind-the-scenes person Zooming in with us today, we can discuss ways that you can be more efficient in a truck or at a studio. Some of these things we have hit on in prior Zooms, but we're also going to be looking back at them. Among them is communication skills, I think are at utter importance during a pandemic, especially when we do get a vaccine in the post-pandemic world, how we accurately and effectively communicate with our coworkers. And we'll wrap it up, and this could happen multiple times throughout the Zoom, beginning, middle, and end, about the future of our business. We'll get your thoughts on what the sports leagues are going to evolve over time and how the broadcasting jobs, both on and off air, are going to change. So this is my final Zoom, as I wrote to everybody in an email and also put on social media for this spring and summer series. On this Zoom, we'll discuss the various topics that I addressed in the previous slide. I want it to be very interactive, kind of like the last one for those of you that were with me for the TV hosting and broadcast writing Zoom. So if you do have a question, comment, share advice, whatever you want to say to everybody, you're welcome to do that at any time. I just ask that if you kindly just raise your hand virtually on the Zoom when you do want to make a comment or question, and we'll get you in when I'm in between my remarks. So happy to have you in there, and you're welcome to do it multiple times throughout the Zoom. I would love, actually, if you want to say a few things. Also, if you want to share any advice with others, I want this not just to be coming from me. So if you have a comment about some things for everybody that they would find informative and helpful, please raise your hand virtually on the Zoom, and we'll get you on. Continue to share your social media handles and websites and any contact info in the chat. You can also tell us where you're zooming in from when you come on camera. You see the quote there from JFK: every accomplishment starts with the decision to try. I can't tell you how many young people that reach out to me or I talk to on the job, or just walking through a stadium, saying, man, I would love to do some sort of broadcasting what you do. And I say, go for it, give it a try. So if you're in college and going back to school in a couple months, or you're in your first job but don't like it and want to try a different avenue, especially during the pandemic, maybe now's the time where you might not be working and your job might or might not be coming back, to maybe think about some things and where you really want your career and future to go. But have a crack at it. The best training I found is on-the-job training, not from a textbook, and I think many of us can agree to that. So first off, before I begin, I just want to say thank you to all of you for making these Zooms for what they were. You guys were awesome to get to know over this time, and I don't want this to end here. I want us to communicate further on social media. Someone suggested that we could do, maybe a Facebook page to keep ourselves, talking about the business, and maybe, who knows, maybe we do this again as well. So just thanks for inspiring and and sharing your experiences on and away from the field, and connecting with everybody during these difficult times. Not everybody would want to be a part of something like this. It's very tough what happened and what is happening, not just for our field, but for a lot of industries. Millions of people have been unemployed or out of work due to this. People have gotten the virus, and family and friends we have known have been affected by this in ways that that we wish would never ever occur in our world. So I say this, that it wasn't just me hosting these things. Of course, yes, I put them together, I coordinated, I sent out emails. That's one thing, but you need an audience, and you need an audience to participate and love this. And I appreciate everybody for being here and for interacting with one another. It's been great. You guys have been a pleasure to get to know. Some of you personally, some of you on here, some of you on social media. So I love it. And that's really the best thing to come out of this. So first, we're going to lead off our Zoom. And again, people can chime in during, I just have a few slides for you today, how the jobs are changing. So a lot of this stuff I've talked about over the past 3 months, and how I titled this one, Reflections, looking back on the past 3 months. This is what we're going to do today. So I advise everybody moving forward to be willing to learn a little bit of everything about your broadcast and sports media industry, even if you don't want to go into sports, and maybe you might want to do news, maybe you might want to do PR, maybe you just want to be a writer or a blogger, or maybe you have a full-time career in sales and something other than sports, but your secondary job is just for fun, and that's maybe getting a press pass and going to cover a single game, which is awesome. I know a lot of people who do that just to get their sports fix. But I advise be willing to learn a little bit of everything. You know, when I do a play-by-play broadcast, I've mentioned on here that I want to learn what the producer does during the broadcast, what the director, what the technical director does. Of course, I can't learn every bell and whistle that's in a production truck, but take the time to understand what the men and women are doing on your show. Goes for the same, and it's an analogous case if you're in the newspaper business, and learn what your copy editor does, learn what your publisher does, learn how your newspaper is physically produced and who actually delivers the newspaper. I'm not saying you'll get to know all these people, maybe like they're your best friend, but I advise that you get to learn everything, because you never know where jobs will open up. It might not be solely on air. There might be some things that are off air that you can get into that can supplement your income. Just something to ponder about for the future, especially when jobs are hard to come by right now. I mentioned purchasing a studio microphone and equipment. The studio microphone goes for people on here that are broadcasters. I myself, I'm not talking to you through it now, but I have a Yeti microphone. I don't think they're really that expensive in the grand scheme of things, especially if you're going to use it. But to communicate with people on here, whether you're going to start a podcast or just host your own show, maybe just put it on your own YouTube or website, I advise to invest in your career and in yourself. If you're, and that might not be buying a microphone. That might be getting some binders for your work, or so to get maybe some better spotting boards for your future games or assignments. Maybe think about how you want to rework your spotting board. You see a picture of my of a Union spotting board here. I'll actually pull one up right here. Could be the same thing. No, it's not. But I've been looking at my spotting boards and seeing, what are some better ways that I can structure this so I can find the information faster when I do have to look down and check up on one of my notes when I can, versus following the play-by-play of a game. Do I want to go back on my boards to something I did a very long time ago? And let me go back to that previous slide. I am sorry. And maybe go back to the manila folder way for college basketball. That's something that I'm thinking about over time. And I've constantly, since I haven't been calling games, I've been looking at a better functionality with my boards and with my prep process, learning when is enough prep and when I need to really go deep, especially and I guess that depends on what sport I'm doing, but it's something to think about when you're not working. The location of our jobs may change. I referenced this with Joel Kate and Scott Zolotaro in a previous Zoom about remote broadcasting, but this can go for those of you that work for an athletics department or for a high school or college radio station. Maybe you'll be able to do those broadcasts from your apartment, from your parents' house, from a basement, wherever. And that's where I go into maybe investing in a studio microphone or something that can help you in your career, where you'll be able to do the job at home, look at your equipment, look at a laptop, and maybe you go for a piece of equipment that you know is going to last over time. It might be a little bit money now, but over time will be of value to you with its longevity. I also mentioned to be your own producer, and that means just be a go-getter. And this just doesn't apply if you're like a play-by-play guy or girl. This goes for those of you that are, trying to get an interview with somebody, where, I reached out to a lot of the guests that, that I've had on here, where I've reached out to you guys, inviting you to be on these Zooms. I didn't just sit back saying, all right, let's see if everybody will just look at my Twitter and sign up. No, I decided, hey, let's send out emails to those of you that have signed up. And if you want to come on, great. If you don't, and you want to ignore it, that's okay too. Everybody has things in their life. So I would say take charge of your product. I think too many people sit back and wait for, their bosses to call you and say, do this, do that. I can tell you a quick story. When I was at Indiana and the Big Ten Student U first started, I was a senior getting ready to graduate. And I remember our volleyball broadcasts were going to be on BTN Student U, which means they were produced by students, announced by students at that time at Indiana. And then they went online on like BTN to go or BTN Plus, I think it's called right now. And then later they re-aired like during the day, actually on the linear network, actually on real TV versus streaming. So it was kind of neat. But I was one of those guys that I called all these different people who I didn't know personally together. I got their emails for people who were part of the process. And we came on and I created a rundown. I said, and again, this was me not saying I was the boss, but I was just coordinating everybody and bringing everybody together, saying, hey, I've called volleyball games for the athletics department. Here's where I think camera 1 needs to be. I think we should have camera 2 be on the baseline. So I was acting almost like a pseudo director there. So I would advise you in all your jobs out there, especially during the pandemic and in the months and years ahead, to take more initiative in your careers. Don't just sit back and wait for an assignment. Pitch an assignment. Pitch a job to somebody. If you're going for a TV job, if you want to be a TV anchor reporter, sometimes if you can get wind of what they do, maybe they do more digital stuff. Email a news director, cold call a news director. Sometimes they'll say, I don't want to talk to you, and that's one thing. But maybe say, hey, I see you doing a lot of digital stuff, but I don't see you doing a lot of reports on the field. Or maybe on Fridays, what I love right now, what's going on some of the morning news is they're down the shore. Hey, maybe on Fridays I can be that man or woman on the street and interview local people, how businesses are getting back during the pandemic or in the months and year ahead. So these are some of the abstract things that I would advise you to think about. Don't just think about, hey, what jobs I did have and what jobs I lost. What should I be doing to gain more work in the future? Convergence media is something we addressed one of my prior Zooms, and that is simply doing multiple things in the media field, such as I can relate it to being a newspaper person. Not only are you writing the story, but you're editing your own copy. You're taking a camera or your iPhone and shooting pictures that you can send to the paper. And you're also you're also putting it on the web, and you're also writing for the newspaper. So that might be two different styles of writing, more pictures for the web, maybe a little longer form stories for the web, and a shorter copy for the newspaper. So If you don't know anything about convergence media and writing, reporting, shooting and editing your own work, it's something you need to master. Don't just be the person that says, I just want to show up, announce the game, and leave. I understand there's certain people that we all look up to that are in those positions, but I would suggest starting small and working your way up there. And if you're in those spots, that's awesome. Where if you're just paid to just call the game and go, that's great. Even at the positions I'm in, I still can't do that. I have to communicate with a lot of different people. I never just show up, do the game, and walk out the door. That's just not my style. I think a lot of you know that. Where we broadcast right now, how we report are changing rapidly, especially with jobs right now, with Major League Baseball coming back. Somebody told me, don't know if this to be 100% true, but reporters may be asked to be in the press box, wear a mask, and will not have clubhouse access, and will have to leave maybe an hour after the final pitch of the game. So are you writing your story on your phone in the car, or you're talking into your phone, or going back to your place and writing the finishing touches of your story? Or if you're on deadline, are you writing your story rapidly? Obviously, you're working on it throughout the game, but getting your quotes. I've heard other people tell me, again, this is just things that are in the process and not as a matter of fact, but maybe post-game press conferences are not attended in person. Maybe they're going to be Zooms like this where you'll be sitting in a press box, or you'll be forced, there'll be no media allowed, like at the US Open. I believe they're telling their media that maybe with the exception of a select few national outlets, media have to stay back, and they'll cover the event watching on TV, but maybe they'll be able to zoom in after a match ends with Andy Murray against John Isner, for example, on at the US Open. So be willing to adapt, especially what's going on. I think a lot of you are doing that. We talked about with things as simple as a haircut, or going out to play ball with your friends, or simply going to a restaurant. So that's, those are some of the things about jobs are changing, and how you need to adapt yourself. Does anybody have any comments or questions about how our jobs are changing on the fly before I go to my next slide? All right, I'll keep going. If you do have a comment or a question, please raise your hand virtually. So applying for future jobs. This has been a hot topic as we reflect back on the past 3 months. And of course, there is no exact science how to do it. Some people will tell you it's the right way. Others will tell you maybe you should have thought about it twice. I think we've all been on both sides of the spectrum. But I first start out with focus on market trends and what college and sports leagues are going to do in the fall, now, in the future. So you need to pinpoint, if you're going after different sports leagues and jobs, what teams are coming back and what teams aren't. What jobs do you see on job boards or you see online are hiring, and what aren't? And be ahead of the curve there. Don't just look at a few job boards and websites that you know and love, and you don't see something on there. That doesn't mean it's open. And I think a lot of you already know that. I think for many of the jobs, I think a lot of people on here can attest to that they're probably in. They went after them, or they maybe got tipped off from a friend or a colleague in the business how to get them. So I advise you to, send those emails to people. Keep them short, keep them sweet. Instead of sending a demo tape to somebody right off the bat, maybe send them a short, maybe 5 to 10 line email. And I know that seems really concise, but I believe they might be more prone to answer you back and say who you are, briefly what you do, what you're about in another sentence, and say, I just wanted to ask if it would be appropriate to send you a short reel about my work, or if you're a writer, maybe a story or two about what you've covered recently, or how you can improve your writing. So maybe that's something. Better introductory emails. Cold calling, I feel like, is a lost art. I know we've talked about that on several Zooms throughout the last 3 months. I think it's still there. I think you could still do it. people use the phone all the time. I think the tough part about cold calling, and we've all been through this, is like just facing that rejection and somebody just like snapping at you. It does happen, but if you can be willing to say to yourself, okay, I can take it, then do it. And if somebody slams the phone down and says, maybe I shouldn't, you shouldn't have reached out to me, say, okay, that's fine. And you move on. So, but you got to be willing to do it, and you got to be willing to try, going back to that JFK quote. So if there's somebody you're trying to reach out to and you have that number, and you want to see what's going on with that organization, it may be a 2-minute phone call, but at least you can check it off on your list. Another piece of advice for applying to future jobs, and something I maybe have mentioned a little bit, but maybe not have harped on. And that's maybe creating an Excel sheet, an spreadsheet. Even if you're not good with Excel or spreadsheets, if you're a handwriting person like me, I would suggest writing down, taking a day or an afternoon in the future, and just writing down your short-term and long-term goals in the industry, and then writing simply in the year fall 2020, or you can start with 2021, January 2021. What do I want to achieve? What are my objectives? And who can I get into? It seems like maybe some of you might be trying to get into colleges. How do I go after getting into a D1 athletics department? And you need to, and maybe you write down 20 schools that you want to reach out to. You may be 0 for 20, but then next to the school, write down a contact at that school you want to reach out to. I would advise strongly, and I'll mention this. It might be on this slide. I'm not reading word for word, but on a future slide, to reach out to contacts around the league and the organizations. Maybe not necessarily the hiring manager first, because then you can get a gauge about what that position's like. And I see that's the last point on this slide of applying for future jobs. So if you're maybe a little nervous, or you're just not ready to reach out to that particular person who's hiring, talk to, if you're at a high school, email maybe a coach, and you can get their email. Maybe they're a teacher at the school, and you go on that school district's website and you reach out and say, hey, what's this athletic director like? Do you think he would even be receptive to hearing about broadcasts? So making the right contacts is really important. I know it's tough, and sometimes it's challenging getting your foot in the door. I feel like that's the hardest part for our industry. But if you don't try, and if you come up short in your first 50 attempts, I wouldn't get discouraged. I think a lot of people stop short because they just face all this rejection, and they get burned out, or they're not making as much money as some of their friends or colleagues in the business. Don't compare to yourself. Don't be bitter in this business. I was listening actually to an interview on, I think Howard Stern is an unbelievable interviewer. Your opinion on his broadcast can be one thing, but if you just take his interviews for what they are, he had Jon Stewart on recently, and Stewart talked about a lot of comedians are bitter with one another, seeing that success. And, he was talking about late night TV, and there's only been, Jay Leno, David Letterman, Johnny Carson, and others have reached the top of the mantle, if you will, in late night television. And he got his taste, and he got his success on Comedy Central, and I believe got on HBO for a little bit, and obviously through his other forms of show business that he's been involved and made himself successful in. I think that's really important to consider what he means by don't be bitter by others. There are people in this business that get jobs that you wish you had, that are younger than you, that are the same age of you, and it's easy to be competitive. And I think you should be competitive, but be competitive in the right fashion. I try to be one of the first ones to reach out to somebody, even if it's a job that I was looking at this is going back a little bit, but if it was somebody I knew and they got that job. We discussed this in the minor league baseball roundtable, where one of the broadcasters we had, I believe it was Sam, was applying for the Iowa Cubs job, but it went to Alex, who was on. And Sam congratulated Alex. He made it known publicly that he went for that job. And I thought that was pretty admirable of Sam to share that and to say, hey, Alex was the better fit for that job because it was more about sales. And I was more of a, broadcast and media relations guy coming up. So I think that's really, really important. I'm reading a little bit from the chat here, and Joe writes a very good note about keeping tabs on colleges around him when they hire new SIDs. Send a note to the media relations staff around. I can tell you guys, and I have friends that are in media relations. Joe, you bring up a great point, because the media relations folks do hire a lot of the broadcasting jobs, especially for the Olympic sports. And the Olympic sports SIDs, media relations people, SIDs, if you don't know, sports information directors, they change a lot. Some of you know that from working in college, but especially those Olympic sports, the smaller sports, the non-football basketball jobs, those people are moving up into those bigger sports. So I would definitely keep tabs on who's leaving and who's staying by looking up staff directories. Maybe spend an afternoon in the future and look up staff directories, not just at college athletic departments, but at networks, TV studios, newspapers, magazines, radio stations. The list goes on and on. Look up staff directories. Usually, if their phone number's not on there, maybe an email's on there, and you send a note. I wouldn't send a note to the top dog on there, but maybe if you send a note to somebody further down the line, they would be more prone to responding to you. Challenging yourself on your next assignment is a big one. It's something that I think I've talked to you guys over the prior Zooms about. How do we get better on our next broadcast? And I take out my notes here, and I could show you that when I was doing lacrosse, that I wrote down, on a note card, all the lingo that I wanted to bring into a lacrosse broadcast. And I've reviewed this, even though I'm not broadcasting lacrosse currently. But I'm not saying I've taken 3 hours to look at this, but if I'm in my office and I'm looking at different ways to say things, a lot of people talked about changing their vocabulary and maybe going back, and I know this is going to sound pretty weird, but maybe going back to a high school or middle school vocab book that you might have, maybe high school, and looking at some things. I'm not saying say words on your broadcast that will make you sound smart. Again, we talked about that on the previous Zoom, but just expanding your vocabulary and maybe looking at your thesaurus, looking up things. Again, I don't expect people to dive into their dictionary. You're probably looking at me funny having said that, but some ways to improve upon your vocab and your description in a given sport. And I bring this with me. I have it in a notebook here, and I bring it with me to the broadcast. That's something I constantly want to improve upon as I grow in the industry. Another thing I want to tell you about challenging yourself in the future, and I'm going through my notes here to show you, and that's when your sports season is not in session, I would advise you to maybe create, you see I handwrite everything, and this is about a team page. And this was about the San Diego Seals. And some things I learned about, they're a mix of vets and young players. They're great on the offensive side because X, Y, and Z. So I spent, a couple minutes out of the day about each team and maybe some off-season acquisitions and transactions they're making. So if you're in minor league baseball, for example, and what's going on with baseball has been horrendous to the minor league baseball industry and to the game and fans itself. We could talk about that maybe at a future time. But I would advise, maybe concentrating on your division one day and looking up, the team's websites and seeing what's going on with each of these teams. Maybe they come up with a broadcast change. Maybe they're hiring people. Maybe they're laying off people. It's to keep tabs on other organizations rather than yourself. When you talk on air, Two of the things that I'm trying to improve upon, and Tony Perkins said this on the last Zoom, and this can go in life too. If you think you're going slow, go slower on your broadcast, especially for those that are doing any form of video streaming or TV broadcasts. I can tell you that's something I'm constantly practicing, challenging myself, that I need to just say the best piece of information in a shorter amount of time. It makes it so much better for on air when you go back and you review your work. That less is more technique, I think, is really important, at least something that I'm focusing on, and I would advise you to do, whether you're on radio or television. You know, trying to jam too much in the beginning, that got me thinking back to our broadcast open discussions, not trying to say a lot right off the bat, letting the analyst shine, making your opens cleaner, shorter, smoother, and more polished, I think is really important to have a smooth open. I'm looking at the chat here. Let's see, Matt Trust on expanding the vocabulary note. I like to use an iPhone app. Okay, so I never knew that. The Goosh, GRE vocabulary. That's awesome, Matt. Thank you for sharing that. That's great. I love that. And I knew nothing about that, so I'm going to have to look that one up. He used that to study for the GRE. I think that's, you know, even if, Matt, that brings up a point. You know, you go into Barnes and Noble or any bookstore, you go in and you look at the section that probably we all avoid once we're out of college, right? Whether it's the GRE, whether it's the SAT, and you know, you go for those prep guides, and maybe that can help you. You go with a piece of paper. You don't have to buy the book. Go with a notepad, take a 30-minute lunch break or something, and sit down in the cafe with a coffee or a Danish and watch and write down some things. Sounds silly, but Matt, that brought a great idea. So maybe I'll have to take my son Hudson when he's older on a trip when it's safe to Barnes and Noble, and we'll do that. While also teaching him sports, of course. Amber liked that. That's great. Matt Nelson. Especially when touring a unit has an off day. Another good idea is whether you're not working game, whether you're in season, look back at your material and work on your demos. I wholeheartedly agree, Matt. When you're not working, go back, review your work. I would also tell you guys to don't be afraid to reach out to athletic department employees, TV stations about touring their facilities. I know that might be a little hard right now, given given the pandemic and what everything's going on, and people limiting the amount of staff in their offices or their respective workplaces. But when things get back to somewhat normal or what they were like before, don't be afraid to reach out and say, hey, not ask for a job. Just say, hey, I love what you guys do. At the Philadelphia Union, I would love to come down and just see the stadium and see the control room. It may be a 20-minute thing, and you might be driving an hour to get there. Or, hey, can I go to Citizens Bank Park where the Phillies play and go tour the stadium? You reach out to, it might not even be the broadcaster. It might be someone in sales or marketing or a ticket person. And if those places say no, maybe aim a little bit smaller at a local college. And say, hey, can I just go see your athletic facilities? Can a media relations person take me around? I just love to see what you guys are made of. That would be awesome. And, you know, sometimes the best people to go about that are people that work in external operations in athletics department. If you don't know what external operations are, it's the people that oversee facilities, media. I mean, I guess every athletic department could define that differently. But I would strongly advise you to look up who might be in charge of facilities and see if maybe one day in the future you can go in and tour. The same can be said for TV radio stations. And again, maybe people today won't say yes to that, but it's something definitely to consider in the future. Watching your games over and over again, very important. Soliciting feedback from others. We've addressed that on prior Zooms. I would highly recommend sending your work out to people. You don't need to send every single thing, but maybe some of your best work that you do in whatever field that you're in, and send it to people that you know and you trust. Even if it's somebody, I want to stress this, even if it's somebody that you feel has not made it, quote unquote, in the industry, or they're not in the NBA, the NHL, Major League Baseball, or MLS. Even if it's a simple friend of yours that has nothing to do with broadcasting, take the time to send it. Just say, just tell me your thoughts on how I looked, sounded on air. And, or it could be a parent. It could be a spouse or a sibling. I would advise you to do that because they may be able to catch something that you did not see or think about in the moment. In the chat, Michael Gross, never ask for a job when emailing someone. Ask if they have some opportunities for you to learn or if there's someone that you can speak with. 80s and SIDs love to talk about their programs. I think that's great, especially at the high school level. I think a lot of those places love to talk about their stuff and might have more time for you at college. I would just go as far to say as it depends, quite frankly, on the person. We all been there. We know some people that are more receptive to taking a call or showing you around, and I think others aren't. So for every 10 people that you reach out to, maybe there's one that is willing to talk to you. And guess what? That's a check mark. That's a gold star for you. That's awesome. Don't be ashamed if a lot of people say no. And Matt, I like that about getting a tour of facilities, reaching out to whoever is in charge of the department. Also, I would say is what Tom's writing too. Ask to shadow people at their work if they'll allow it. It is a great way to network. And Tom, you're right. A couple broadcasters have come on here and say that a lot of people get into their productions, and this is maybe for a lot of off-air people, by just going to the production truck and working for free, saying, hey, can I run a cable? Hey, I see Big Ten Network is coming to Rutgers to do a college football game. And you reaching out, finding out through Rutgers media relations person who might be the producer from ESPN or Big Ten Network in this case, for this example, and saying, hey, can I be a runner? If they say no, hey, can I just stop by the truck before the game or can I come in during the game? Can I just get a pass to see what you guys do? Again, might be a little hard now with what's going on in the world, but I agree with Tom. Shadowing is awesome. If the organization and that person will allow it. I think that's great. I think I can tell you several stories that I've done it in my career where I've driven the hour and a half to go watch a broadcaster work or go learn about a production or I know I wanted to be on air, but I sat in the production truck for a game and saw what people did. I knew I probably wasn't fit to be a producer or director. That's not where my passion lies, but I have a deep appreciation for what the men and women do. And you learn through the behind the scenes stuff how you can set yourself apart from other broadcasters, writers. Am I stopping in the truck to talk with everybody and say hello? Not because I'm faking it, because that's the person I am. Am I communicating effectively with a producer, director, with the graphics people, so I know what's coming and what's ahead, or I can lead them in the right direction? So going over the graphics ahead of time. These are all things that can improve yourself and separate yourself in your given career. If anybody has any questions or comments, again, feel free to raise your hand virtually, or if you want to share advice to anything I'm saying in the chat, you are welcome to do so. I'll keep going if I don't see any hands. Communication during the pandemic is very, very, very important. Are you reaching out to your employers, or are they reaching out to you? I think a lot of us are in that boat. Some of us are sitting back. Some of us are sitting back because there's, quite frankly, no communication to be had, because a lot of our employers don't know what the heck is going on, so they have nothing to share with you. So I think that's really important, where if you're not getting the necessary updates to send that note, make a phone call. If you're on good terms and have a little bit of a better relationship with your bosses or colleagues, do you send a text message and say what's going on? What's the future looking like for our workplace? I think that's something that you definitely should consider. Stephen Eggert wrote, I just got an opportunity a couple of weeks ago producing, editing fitness videos for a gym trainer 5 minutes from him. That's awesome initiative by Steve. And Steve, that's the definition of being a go-getter, going after something. Steve, I know Steve personally, works in sports, and he's doing something that's still in media, but for a non-sports entity. And hopefully it's a way to make some money too. So that's awesome, Steve. So communication is really big, ever more so during these times. Are you scheduling interviews and meeting with clients and key stakeholders? So are you using platforms like Zoom? I know professional organizations also use Microsoft Teams, Google Hangout. There's other ways to stay involved and with others, or is it simply Skyping or FaceTiming, video chatting with others? I think that is so important with people. Is it creating something like this? Is it going on Instagram Live and talking to your fan base? And even if nobody's watching it and it lives on for a day, it just gets your product and your name out there and you're staying relevant, even when we're not on the air. So I would advise, especially as this spring summer series is ending on my end, if anybody wanted to, if anybody wanted to set up and say, hey, let's have a quick Google Hangout or a Zoom or a FaceTime or an Instagram session, and see what we're all doing, and check up on each other in a month or two. I think that would be awesome, if anybody wants to take a lead on that. The media contacts to see what sports they cover, I think, is a huge one. If you have friends in the business that, let's say I'm a broadcaster, but I have several friends that are writers. I have several friends that are production people. I have several friends that are media relations people. And I'm talking to them about what's happening in the industry and how it's affecting their jobs. And in turn, it's helping me because I'm understanding what the hell's going on out there if I'm not hearing from my respective outlets that I work for. So I would advise you to start reaching out to your friends, colleagues in the business, or people you might be just friends with on, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all the social media platforms, and ask them what's going on about their jobs. If you have that type of relationship, is their organization hiring? Is their organization bringing back furloughed workers? This is something to really consider. And you can get, by doing this, I feel, just my opinion, that you can get that upper hand and a jump start into getting back to the workplace. Make sure others, though, are taken care of during the pandemic. And what I mean is by reaching out to people, seeing how they're doing on a personal level. I think that's really important. When you reach out to maybe that contact, your first email might be how they're doing because you genuinely care, not asking, for a job. Scott S.D. Weiss, who's involved in water polo, writes a lot in the chat, which is awesome. Scott has, I believe, hooked up others in these Zooms with opportunities. And he has provided remote broadcasting opportunities for several people and internships. So Scott works in a very specialized sport in water polo, but he may be able to give you a jump start into working today. So Scott is a great person. Scott, thanks for chatting. Is someone definitely to reach out to. That's awesome. No one is looking out for you but yourself. I think that is so important, ladies and gentlemen. You are your own advocate when you are going after jobs. I know some of you on here may have agents, and we've discussed that at some points throughout the past 3 months about whether it's great to have an agent and whether it's okay not to have an agent. But I'd say this, that even the agents are going to tell you it's about a partnership if you're with them, and they're not going to be, looking out for you, every minute of every day. They have other things to do, other clients to get a handle on. And some people, quite frankly, have horror stories where they are not pitched for jobs that they thought they would be, and there's no communication. Be your own agent. Be your own advocate, be your own supporter. Go out there, be a go-getter. This goes for people that were so successful in as entrepreneurs in business or CEOs of companies where they started from one little idea and then made themselves into self-made millionaires. It can happen in our industry as well, maybe not from the monetary standpoint, but from the standpoint of improving where you're at in your career. if you're going after things and throwing 100 things at the wall. Maybe one or two things will stick, or one or two things will lead. So make it, make it a priority for you. Maybe on Tuesdays and Thursdays, you spend time to reach out to 15 new people, new contacts. You write 15 cold emails, and you may get nothing for the first 45 of those emails, but over time, maybe you might get a response. So maybe it's one day out of the week, maybe it's 1 hour out of the week. That's for your choosing and your time management, but I would advise you to continue to think about the industry when you get a chance and when you're in the right frame of mind to do so. I talked about the being proactive with future prep and research by showing you some of my boards, how I want to format my things maybe a little bit differently when I go back to work. I have here a board of, I think I showed this to you on a previous Zoom, a Rutgers Lafayette game board that I have. It's not players, but it's like team stats and team notes that I want to include on the broadcast. But maybe I can, I've looked at this a lot, and maybe I can do this. Maybe I don't need this much material because I know I'm never reading this much material on the air. And maybe I can put this all on one sheet in addition to my spotting boards, as opposed to two things, just to conserve space on the call. Some of you are probably better at that than I am, but it's some of the things that I'm working on is how to improve the prep process when I'm not on the air. What I advised maybe 10 minutes ago, and I'll say it again for those of you joining, is coming up with future topics. Like for these Zooms, I'll give you a little behind the scenes. What I did is when I decided to do them on a week by week basis, I went down the list and said, this week I want to talk about play-by-play. This week I wanted to have a PA announcer Zoom. This week I wanted to reach out and get Kevin Harlan on, or Sean McDonough, or Kenny Albert. This week I wanted to do minor league baseball. And I reached out to those people when appropriate, and a lot of them came to fruition just with timing and sometimes luck. And people were willing to do it. So I would say to yourselves, write a list. It doesn't take time. Even when you're sitting down, have a notepad by your table before you go to bed and scribble notes down, or use your phone and write it on notes in your phone. I think that's really important. And these are some easy things to think about, but I would advise you to be a little more proactive, especially during the pandemic. Contingency plans are a big one. And your job is going to change. It's going to evolve. Look, I think a lot of us, our jobs have changed due to these times. Calling more games from the studio. If you're a media person, not being able to go to the venue. What happens if you are in college right now and they say to you, you used to call all these college sports for your college radio station, and you go back to campus and they say you can't be in the press box. Well, maybe you got to call the game on the roof, or maybe you have to call the game in the stands. I've called games, and I actually liked it, sitting next to fans in the stands before. It might not be practical, but I've literally held like a manila folder or a sheet of loose leaf paper as my prep or my spotting board, and I called the game just like that. So if you're younger and you're going back to school and your athletic department says, hey, we can't allow you in the press box, maybe say to them, okay, how about if I sit in the stands away from everybody in the corner and I call the game and we run a long cable to get our ISDN line or to get some internet access, or if there's Wi-Fi, great, and we get some sort of signal back to our station and make this work. Or am I doing it on Facebook or Instagram Live or YouTube Live? I think there's some of the things that you need to explore. If you're not on your job, let's say you're in minor league baseball, are you doing interviews like on these platforms on Zoom or Google Hangout and recording them on your computer and then replaying them for your team website, checking up on players, on fans, on teams? And maybe not just focusing on the players, but other people in the workplace. Like, just be really creative in what you do. What can you do to help your organizations during this time? And I think by scheduling interviews and doing these video chats can help you and your organization in turn. Again, if anybody has any questions or comments, feel free to raise your hand. Well, when I'm done the slides, we can have that open-ended forum as well on the back end of this. The future of our business. This is a really, really big one, and a lot of conjecture and a lot of projection, right? We don't know what's to come, but here are some of the things that came to me. Get familiar with the digital space if you haven't already. What do I mean by digital space? I mean the advancement, as you see, of streaming events. What is ESPN doing with ESPN Plus? What schools are having their own broadcasts and hiring broadcasters? Whether it's students, and what schools are hiring freelancers if you just graduated. Learning how to broadcast games from your house. Learning how to broadcast games at a venue that you might not have thought about. So going back to maybe sitting in the stands versus the press box. Learning how to work with minimal equipment to get the game on air. Broadcasting your game, if it's not on TV, maybe if it's on YouTube, maybe it's on Facebook Live. How many of you on here have been on Facebook? Probably everybody, right? You guys know what Facebook Live is. You can go on and do your thing, do your broadcast on there, pitch that to your organization. I think that is huge. Do that. I'm reading a couple of the texts that are coming in. Michael says, I've sent texts over the past few weeks to every one of the coaches, SIDs that have hired me to check it. That's great, Michael. I think that's awesome that you do that. Justin Simmons writes, earlier this week, one of my reporter friends sent a tweet out that people in the industry follow each other in the thread. I made some nice connections. That's great. And follow Justin. And I think that's having threads simply on Twitter can help the growth of your brand and get your name out there. Tom, there's a lot of great people in the industry who can become friends. It is an organic process, but you can only get to know them by building a network. Don't burn bridges too right. You got to be a great person, and people are going to read who you are. You can't fake it. And there are so many great people in this business. For every few bad apples there's tons of that. We've talked about this on other Zooms. There's tons of awesome people, and I think everybody in here is awesome for willing to participate in something like this. So I think that's a fantastic piece of advice from Tom. Spencer, I have a note page that scrolls on forever with incorporated vocabulary for specific sports. I don't try to use them all at once. I write down 5 to 7 of them on a separate sheet and play cricket like a darts game. That's great. I like that. That's really creative, Spencer, and awesome. Do you have a few personal favorites you enjoy using? Nothing like as far as any games or stuff like that. What I've told people what I do is not so much phrases, but I'll write down my thing to say with that is, I'll write down broadcast reminders on a note card that you saw earlier. And a lot of it won't be vocab driven. A lot of it will be standing up straighter, smiling more, projecting more, talking smoother, saying less, looking at my analysts when they're talking. And it's simple things, but I remind myself. Matt, terrific one. I think Twitch is on the rise too. Might be avenues to calling virtual games esports. I wholeheartedly agree. If you're not on the esports and virtual reality games or whatever you want to call it, you can tell really that industry is really booming. And I would advise you to just look up broadcasts of Fortnite, the World Cup of some of these esports events, and look up how they produce their events. It's something you might want to look into. Matt, great suggestion about Twitch, how these people are making money by playing video games and getting people to sponsor them. It's awesome, and it's something that you should be looking into. Amber, I need to learn how to use Twitch because I've heard people. Yes, it's something that so maybe somebody on here can do a tutorial about Twitch with everybody. Sean wrote, I went live on Twitch the other week and live streamed our FIFA co-op game. That's awesome. So I definitely recommend. Twitch is definitely part of this future of our industry, and that's something to look into, the digital space. So social media. There's a lot of broadcasters that don't like social media for a variety of reasons, but I think it is a great way, even if you're not really as active as others, it is a cool way to get news gathering, to follow other broadcasters, to follow outlets, and to learn industry trends. I believe everything revolves around video. I wrote the radio broadcast for audio stream. How many times do we see a video, at least nowadays, with radio broadcasters putting behind the scenes work of their call, and the PR staff is tweeting out, oh, here's Joe Smith doing the final out of a no-hitter, and it's the radio broadcaster doing it. It's the behind the scenes. I think we all love behind the scenes content. So I think the more video that you can incorporate in your jobs and behind the scenes work, tweeting out your prep process is something I've done a lot, just to keep our fans and stakeholders engaged about what I do when I walk into a game. And it's never like I walk in and say, what game am I calling? I have all these elaborate boards and notes, and I want to show people that I deeply care about the product. Radio broadcast versus audio stream broadcast is an important one, and something to watch with the future of our industry. How many teams will be in the future, and maybe this won't happen at all, but how many teams will cut radio broadcasts and just stream them on their specific apps? I don't want to say the team name because I'm not 100% sure, but I think there's a Major League Baseball team that did that, where they scrapped their radio broadcasts on terrestrial radio like AM, FM, and I believe their broadcasts are just on an app, and they still, I believe, have the announcers, the radio announcers still on payroll, which is awesome. But I would follow the radio industry and the future. And that especially goes with college athletics departments. Will they stop airing their games on local radio? Joe wrote the Oakland A's did that for 2020. That was the team that I was thinking of, Joe. So if that is the team, I think you're right. I just wasn't 100% sure, but I think you're spot on about that. Amber, are teams going away from radio? What will that be the next trend? It's a very good question, and something I focused on. I love doing radio. Just the way my career has worked out, for whatever reason, I just got on TV at a young age, and I just got more opportunities on TV as opposed to radio. But I still believe that radio is the purest form of broadcasting, and I wish I did more, quite frankly. So it's something that I definitely think that everybody should be following in the next 5 years. What's going to happen to radio? Matt Trust, I think the next trend is anything that's a cost savings. I agree too. Cost cutting is huge. I think, like Joel Kate said in one of our remote broadcasting Zooms, like 2 Zooms ago, we see that a lot in production trucks on these REMI broadcasts, that the producer director position is being consolidated into one. Maybe even the producer, maybe the director, not only calling the show, but he cuts his own show. Like he or she could act as the technical director, pushing the buttons for that show. And that could happen for a lot of broadcasters, being your own engineers. Will radio show hosts be able to do their radio productions from a studio? How many of you have friends in the business world where they're being sent surveys right now saying, are you just as productive working at home as opposed to coming in the office? And maybe some people are writing yes. Maybe they only need to come into the office 1 or 2 days a week. Can a radio broadcast, if you're a sports talk show host, happen from your living room couch? The answer probably is yes. I think it's nice and old-fashioned and cool to be in the studio with the bells and whistles, but do they send you a work laptop where you can screen your callers, or if you don't have callers, just to do your show, and you buy that Yeti microphone and produce your content from your home? I think the ability to do games from your house, if it's being done right now during a pandemic, I can see it being done in the future, absolutely. Sean responded to Amber. Owen and Sean went live for our Philly Sports Podcast for the NFL Draft, and it totaled 15 hours. I remember that, Sean. That was awesome. And it was great of you and Owen to create that content. That's great. So I advise you guys to follow the future trends. How are sports fans going to get the content that they want? Let's say you can't get into a press box because of the pandemic and the virus, right? There's no vaccine. Are you still writing your articles online? And maybe you're writing them for yourself and then putting them on Twitter, and that's your outlet to put them on. And it might be a short recap or it might be a column. But I think if you can, still cover your event even if you're not there, and you could still get your interviews by calling people on the phone, Zooming with them, FaceTiming with them, Skyping with them for free. I think that's something you should consider. Also look at how these athletic departments and these colleges are producing their games. How are they making sports networks if they're not with a company like ESPN or the Big Ten Network or the Pac-12 Network? How are these schools getting their games on the air? And what is their process for hiring people that are not only behind the scenes, but also on the air? Learn the technology. It's very important. And I'm not saying you need to be an expert on that technology like a Joel Kate, the producer who was on here, but you should know the basics of how each network gets on the air. More work for less people, I think, is definitely a theme. Amber, my sports network, and I did a mock live NFL draft 2 rounds only, and it took 5 hours on this app called Sportscaster. That's awesome, Amber, and that's great. See what apps are out there and ways that you can be a part of. There's a lot of digital companies that are just putting their content online, and maybe if you're a writer, there's a way for you to talk about, make a little vignette, and make a video, maybe a 2 to 5 minute thing about your writing process about, hey, when I was talking with Joe Girardi, the new manager of the Philadelphia Phillies for this piece, Joe told me X, Y, and Z. And it's a little thing that you can think about on your website. I said it before, and I'll say it again about the future. If you don't have a website, I would advise you to look into making one, as simple as Googling how to make a website for free or for little money. Ask fellow people on here how to make one. I would advise you strongly to do that and to reach out to people. Even if you look up other broadcasts and say, hey, Joe, you have a really cool website. Can you just you're not asking them for a job or work. How did you create it? Simple, short and sweet to the point. Just something to consider to get your work out there, because as I think we all know, the internet really is everything in this day and age. All these newspapers, athletic departments, sports leagues want to grow their video content. So if there are ways that you know how to pump out video, great content at a rapid pace, I would strongly advise you do so, whether it's getting together with a group of friends if you're in college and creating some video content like Amber and Sean have talked about. I think that is awesome, and it shows potential and prospective employers the initiative and what you guys do to try to get your product out there. Are the days of the big size production trucks over? For the pseudo events like the Super Bowl, the Masters, NCAA tournament, even a big time college basketball or football game on ESPN, I would say that those big production trucks like Game Creek and others, like NEP, will still be there. But for the smaller shows that you're working on, it may be as simple as like some of the schools you guys are at. If you're in college, using a TriCaster and it's a lot today is about getting the game on the air. Quality might not be of the most importance at the smaller levels, and just maybe having a one camera setup, panning left to right. And you and a fellow commentator are IDing the players accurately. So I would go after organizations, understand what their objectives are and how they produce the content. The hiring of team and league reporters versus network jobs, I think this is where the future is now on this topic. I think you're seeing a lot of teams wanting to control their own messaging, right? And networks do the same. But in particular for teams and leagues, you can look up the NHL. They have their own reporters, Major League Baseball, NBA. They have their own reporters, and they understand how they want to get out their product and send their messaging. The same can go for what I think one of the first leagues to do a good job at that, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, if maybe another league was really the first one, But let's take a look at MLB.com and creating all these jobs for all the Major League Baseball teams. And they had each team hired, what was it, one or two writers, or maybe it was a writer and an intern. Going back to the days I was in college, I had a couple friends that interned for a couple teams. And they pumped out articles left and right. And they were effectively the beat writers for their team through MLB.com, but they really were working hand in hand with the team. So that controlled the messaging a little bit. Some of you may say, well, that might not be the truest form of journalism, but that's where the jobs are lying. So if you become the team person for that specific outlet, I think that that's something to consider about the future. Something I didn't write on here and I want to address, and that's the form of, I guess I said this at the top, but it's social media. I think one of the things about the future of our industry is the hiring of social media managers, and for those controlling the Twitters, the Facebooks, the LinkedIn, the Instagram, but also those, if you can learn how to master social media, pumping out product like that, maybe learning graphic design skills, but also be a great broadcaster, writer, and effective communicator. I think that you can, if you're a broadcaster, you can go after those social media jobs. It might not be exactly what you really planned on doing, but if you see a social media job hiring, maybe in your meeting with the people, you can say, well, you know, my training was to be a sports anchor and reporter. And if given the job of a sports social media manager, I can do all these things. But what I can also do for you is I can pump out 5 to 10 stories a day. We'll make them 1 minute maximum stories and put them on our Twitter, on our Facebook, on our Instagram. And I'll be your host and I'll create some ways to do this. So these are things that you need to think about, these effective pitches in the future of our industry. I advise everybody that when you go into these meetings with prospective clients, always say what more you can do and go beyond the job proposal, especially during a pandemic. Read Sports Business Journal, read The Athletic if you subscribe there. Follow some of the newspapers and magazines and trade magazines you know and you trust, and learn what CEOs and people of big companies are saying about the future of our industry. That's really, really important. And understand that things can change on a dime. We've seen that during the pandemic, how much our jobs have changed and evolved. And you can't take no for an answer for a lot of these things. If somebody says to you, you know, there's going to be no more play-by-play broadcasting from the studio, say, hey, can I do the play-by-play from my house in some way? Can you help me with technology? Can I call it from a coffee shop? You know, if they say, hey, there's going to be no fans in the stands, but you're a PA guy. Hey, I think there should be a PA announcer because it would be great for the players, for the officials, and for maybe our stakeholders who are in the building to know what's going on. And my job's important because of X, Y, and Z. You can only define success for yourself. I think you are, like I said before in a previous slide, your best advocate for you. So following the trends of our industry is really important. For those of you that are told your jobs are going to be eliminated or cut because there's no fans, you should be constantly thinking about how you can combat that with your employers by saying, okay, there might not be fans or there might not be as many fans when we come back in the fall, but here's why my job is important. And you go through maybe those 5 to 10 bullet points. I think that's really important before you make that phone call to your employer about your job status. I strongly advise you guys to write down a couple key points to advocate yourself and to keep your job at your respective employer. I think that's very important. It's something that I think about all the time. Before I open it up to comments on the back end, I just want to say that, you know, throughout, you know, the 3 months here, it has been an absolute thrill for me to host these. You know, I prepared for these like I was doing a play-by-play broadcast for a big team or television or radio network. And what I said to my high school graduating class, I was not a valedictorian, but I was an elected speaker in 2007. And I said, don't let anyone hinder your path to success. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again, no matter how many people tell you no, you can make it in this industry. How far you want to go is only what you and you only can determine. And you know how long you want to give it to where you want to go, and you might not make it in 5 years. You might not make it. And what is it? Some of you may say 10 years. Some of you may say 15. It all depends on yourself and your particular situation. But I'll say that rejection that we've talked about, and I won't go too long on this final note, but rejection is prevalent. But I will tell you to just keep going after it, and that yes is around the corner. But don't compare yourself to others. You can look up, spend a day on Wikipedia and see how Sally went from college to her first job, to her second job, to her third job, and that's great, and that can share some perspective. But this is a circuitous path. Everybody's path to where they want to go is indirect. Some people will make it faster than others, but keep that drive and determination to get to where you want to go. But don't let anybody tell you you're not good enough. I can't tell you how many people say to me, I've heard from a boss or a friend or a colleague say, he or she is never going to make it, or this Dave guy doesn't have what it takes. And I said to them, or I said to myself, really, I'll show them. Or I'll say to myself, I'll show you. I've done it in my journey. And I know others probably on here have done it with them. So it's been a lot of fun putting these together over the past 3 months. And it's been great connecting with all of you. And I'm really grateful for getting to know you guys on here. And I really wish everybody on here, and I know not everybody is a broadcaster. Some of you maybe are doing this as a side business, or some of you are on here just wanting to learn. But I think that it's great that you came on here during these difficult times where a lot of us aren't working, to grow, learn, listen, inspire, and teach one another. So, I thank you for listening over the past 3 months plus. It has been a thrill to be part of. And again, don't let anybody or anything hinder your path to success. I sincerely mean that. So that concludes my PowerPoint. If anybody would like to say any words of advice or words of encouragement to others, you're welcome to do so at this time. So I'll just please raise your hand if you would like to say anything, and I'll take a step back.
Well, it was really nice to meet all of you. I wish I was able to get a chance to come here sooner, to be honest.
Oh, that's great. Thank you very much. Is that Justin?
Yeah, I appreciate you putting this together again, Dave.
You're welcome, man. You have a New York Cosmos jersey too.
Big soccer fan, so obviously I've heard you before, but what's it called? Also talked a lot of soccer here in the Austin area, and then with Austin FC coming along,
Yes.
Got a lot of good stuff from you that I can take on my journey to see if I can, find an avenue there. You just never know.
Do you maybe have one, while we have you, do you have one piece of advice or things that you learned along your career path or as you're applying for jobs that you might want to share to everybody on here or might watch on a replay?
Well, I guess I'm not like the most well-known broadcaster, but I do a lot of work for Flow Sports. And the one thing, I guess, if I can give any advice right now, is just get comfortable with learning how to broadcast from a studio with somebody that you can't communicate in another state or another country, and just be able to roll with the punches, because things are not always going to be the way that you want it. We all love having the fancy boards. I know I like to spend hours on it if I can, but a lot of the times when I get work for them, they're asking me to come in, do 4 or 5 games in a single day with quick turnover, and I'm just trying to put the prep together that I can. Now, I know it's not always going to be perfect. Am I going to use everything from those games for tapes? No, I understand that. But they're paying me to do a job, and I love what I do, and it allows me to do this without having to have a part-time job anymore. But it is real work. And if you understand that when the day it's not fun anymore, it's the day that you have to decide, like, maybe this isn't for me. But that's what this industry is going to, at least in my eyes, because I already know there's going to be some baseball in Lake Charles in a couple of weeks, and I'm supposed to be from a studio in Austin. I don't even know who's playing yet, but I'm going to try to find out as much as I can.
No, that's wonderful. That's great, and especially when you're calling all these games one day, or all these games in a week, it's tough, right? And so I appreciate all the advice, and I wish you nothing but the best, Justin. That's awesome that you're on. I see a couple hands are raised. Let's go to one of my friends and one of the guests that we've had on the Zoom, Colin Cosell.
Well, Dave, thank you so much. I'm sorry I missed the beginning of this, and I've actually missed the last few. I managed to get a work from home job, so it's actually kind of kept me busy. And then amidst all of that, they're going to keep me busy for months to come. Baseball is suddenly coming back. So, but I wanted to jump on before I have to go host another roundtable. It's this business thing, and it's completely not sports related at all. It's totally boring, but it pays the bills. But Dave, I wanted to jump on real quick and say thank you for hosting these, for keeping us all connected during the pandemic. It really has been an honor to be a part of them. It's been an honor to be one of your guests, and to meet so many people that are aspiring to make it in the various facets of this industry. What you've done, Dave, is truly a great and admirable thing. Not enough people were doing it. The guests that you brought on have been extraordinarily educational, friendly, and insightful. And we really owe you a debt of gratitude, Dave. So I wanted to come on and thank you personally for that. And I'm sure that that resonates with everyone here and every guest that you've had over the past 3 months.
Yeah, I really appreciate your kind words, and I look forward to following you at the Mets and hopefully our Riptide. We got the #1 overall pick in the draft, which is exciting, right?
Yeah, buddy.
Shortened season helped us out there, right? No, that's awesome, and congrats on your work and the Call Me Up Colin series, what you're doing with Bruce as well. It's all awesome to see that you've also, so it's right back at you. You've taken the initiative over the time, and I've learned a lot, from seeing what you're doing over afar and others like you, how to stay connected and relevant and keep everybody engaged. So I really do appreciate the kind words, and I will hope to see you in person soon, Colin.
I'm hoping so as well. And yes, that first round draft pick, we're just going to keep on building this youth movement with the Riptide. But and just parting words to everyone out there is don't give up on your dream. I didn't achieve mine until I was 38. Keep persevering. Adversity is only going to make you stronger. If it comes to you easily, then you're going to be very boring to talk to at dinner. With your peers. It should never be a straight line. It should be more of a question mark. And then when you land there, it's an exclamation point. So, and if there's anything I can do to help anyone out here, I put it in the message, the group chat. You can follow me on Twitter at CoSellPA, or shoot me an email, colin@nowondeck.com. It's all about networking in this industry. Very few make it without networking. So it's been great chatting with everyone and getting to know everyone a little bit better. And to those I haven't yet, my door is always open. So Dave, thanks again. Sorry to pop on and pop off, but I hope everyone takes care, stays safe, does everything by the books, and follow the lead of New York State. We seem to be getting this curve down. I hope to see everyone in their respective booths in due time.
All right, Colin, can't wait to hear your pipes on the next PA or broadcast, man. Really appreciate it. All right, that's
likewise.
Colin.
Can't wait to hear you on a Riptide call.
I can't wait. I'm going to go crazy for another win.
No kidding.
That's Colin Cosell, everybody. Take care, Colin. And now we'll go to Jack Benjamin. And Jack has been one of the guys who has been with us really since day one. And Jack, I can't thank you enough for contributing to these Zooms too.
Yeah, Dave, I had a lot I was going to say, but I think Colin said most of it. So not easy to follow the PA boys of the Mets. I'm looking forward to hearing him soon too. But yeah, I mean, look, similar to what he said and similar to what the article that they wrote about you said, this is this is a really good thing. I hope none of us have taken for granted what you've been able to do here, because to get the guest you had and the knowledge, and I told you I've heard your work. I think the world of what the job that you do as a play-by-play guy, and at 24, I mean, I'm trying to just get near where you are, obviously. So this has meant a lot that you would take the time to do this, and I'm sure you're prepping. I don't know if it's quite the spotting board level for your union broadcast here when you're getting ready for these, but no, hey, it's meant a lot. It's been educational. If I was, as far as like advice goes, I don't think I have a ton to offer people when I'm just starting out in this profession, unlike you and Colin, who've at least been established. But yeah, it's all about the grind in this industry. I think it's just a constant battle. What can you do to separate yourself and get better? And I was fortunate. I found a little project in terms of gathering some great calls and reaching out to some broadcasters and in a similar way and trying to find out about their stories a little bit. But every day, it's a constant battle to find a way to get better. And I think you've given us an avenue to do that here. It's been educational. It's been a lot of fun. And yeah, I mean, I can't thank you enough. I know we're all incredibly appreciative of what you've been able to do here these last couple months.
Well, I really appreciate that. And, I want to congratulate you on that bracket challenge you had both on the radio and TV side. And, if you can if for those that don't know what that was about, if you could shed some light on how the idea came to be. And then as you've connected with broadcasters, and you hit on this with a little bit of your advice with everybody's career is different there, but maybe some of the things you learned from the people you've interviewed or talked to about how some of the people you look up to have made it.
Yeah, the challenge itself, it's funny that I'll tell it rather than doing the whole long story here. Yeah. I was sitting at my table one day and I was like eating breakfast or something, and I looked on Twitter and someone did a fast food bracket, and it was like it was like McDonald's and I don't know, In-N-Out and Raising Cane's, a bunch of these. I was like, this one line doesn't make sense. And I was talking to my dad, and I'm like, hey, what do you think about maybe trying to do something broadcaster related? Initially, it was going to be like signature calls, like the Marv Albert Yes Call and Holy Toledo by Bill King. And then it manifested into, I wonder if I could pull this off with the greatest calls of all time, just to honor some of the legends of the industry. I feel like in our industry, especially, the way you learn is from people who've done it before. So me learning from you, I'm sure you've got guys you looked up to when you were growing up. They had guys they looked up to. And I did. It was fun to research it, just to look back to the 70s and the 80s and the guys I wasn't alive for, to appreciate their greatness and figured out what made those calls great. So was lucky that I put it on social media. People were interested. They gave me some thoughts on what should be included in the bracket. We put it together, and similar to you, I think I've been fortunate the last couple of years to get some connections and kept in touch with those people. Like Colin's saying, it's all networking in the industry. Kept in touch with people and was super fortunate to get in touch with guys like Jim Nantz and Joe Buck and Kevin Harlan. I know you had him, and Mike Breen. And the biggest thing, I think there's two takeaways for me from all the interviews that I did with the guys. Number one, just the appreciation they have for the guys who've come before them. Like I was saying, they all have guys they've looked up to. Marv Albert was a big mentor for all of them. And Bill King was a big one. And there's so many guys who they're appreciative who were in the bracket with them. And two, as much as it was about the call and the bracket themselves, the Al Michaels Miracle on Ice call won the TV. The Rad Bramblett call for Auburn Radio, the Kick Six won the radio bracket. Mm-hmm. Pretty much all of them said, look, as much as I'm appreciative of having my call in here, it's about the broadcast itself. How do you manage the three? It's just what you've talked about. How do you manage the 3 to 4 hour broadcast? How do you get through a rain delay? How do you cut to break? How do you lay out for 2 minutes when it's needed at the Masters with Tiger winning? How do you sit there with Nick Faldo if you're Jim Nantz for 2.5? He's like, the favorite part of my call of Tiger winning the Masters was sitting there and not saying anything for 3 minutes. When you hear the guy who's maybe the most famous in the world right now and the best at doing it saying, my best call is when I didn't talk, right. I think it tells you a lot. So that's really that was the coolest part about it for me.
No, that's great. And you're a rising star in the business. I know I'm not the first to say that, and it's been great getting to know you through these forums, Jack, and we'll keep in touch, and can't wait to hear your next call.
Yeah, appreciate that, Dave. Hoping there's a football season right now, but that's not neither here nor there right now. Just hoping everyone stays safe. So
I want to get, since you're in the college athletic sphere, I wanted to get your before you go, I wanted to get your final point on what you think is the future of college athletics. You could start with the fall, you could start with the spring. We know many sports have been cut, but
you talking from a broadcast perspective, or
yeah, from a broadcast perspective, or you can take it from a media perspective. It doesn't solely need to be, play by play, announcers, but, how do you see these, in just your opinion, on how do you see college sports being covered? Again, this can go for writers, can go for TV people, could go for photographers. What do you think is going to happen with college sports? Or do you think it's going to be an individual state by state or school by school thing?
probably conference by conference first, just in terms of when, like, I'm just thinking football right now. I can't think ahead to basketball yet. Like, mentally, I'm if there's not football, I'm going to be there's going to be a different byline on my Twitter handle come February, come October, whatever it is. So
Right.
just in terms of football, teams play 10, 11 games, and you've got your conference games, but like for us, we've got LSU on the schedule week 5. So I'm not going to say the amount. That's a big payday for a mid-major school like Nichols. That's money you need to fund Olympic sports, right? So without football, other sports are just naturally in trouble. But from a coverage perspective, I think especially now, I'm already hearing from people about the road the road radio crew having to call it off a monitor, and that in itself, just think about calling a football game off a monitor. Like, it's one thing to call ski jumping like I've done, or water polo or soccer off a monitor, but you're talking about an 80-yard heave downfield, and the God forbid the cameraman's a little bit late or whatever, you can't see the ball. So I wish I could have a better answer to your question in terms of what coverage looks like and broadcast look like, but I think it's probably first a divisional basis in terms of Division I, what they want to do, and then by conference, just in terms of realignment. I know a lot of conferences already have said, hey, we're gonna split into divisions this year and do it by regionally. These 5 schools happen to be a little bit closer than these schools. Maybe it's 2 hours less of travel. Maybe it's 1 less plane flight to avoid contracting a virus by hopping on a plane for a year. So I think that's something to look at. I think from a coverage perspective, they'll probably limit the amount of media. Maybe it might even be like a season ticket holder thing where they're talking about fans. If you've got a 100,000 seat stadium like the Big House in Michigan, maybe you can only fit 20,000 in there, and they've got to split up which fans go to which game. So you have, the key fans go to the Ohio State game. Other fans get, Penn State, or no, I'm just kidding. The Penn State game is a big one too, but other fan gets a Rutgers game or something like that. And I think it could be the same thing for media. You're a Sports Illustrated or ESPN guy, you can cover the Ohio State game, you can cover this game. Otherwise, you got to watch it on the TV and cover it that way.
Which is what I'm hoping that local media does not get gypped from all this stuff. And I have the strangest feeling that a couple of these organizations and teams are going to say, hey, we're only going to let our big paper, maybe a big photographer from that outlet, or we're going to have our athletics people shoot the game, and they'll send B-roll to the TV radio stations, or they'll get it off the ESPN or, the network broadcast. Just the fact that you're not there. And I hope that doesn't restrict, especially college students, because they're paying to be there and for that experience. So I hope that everybody's welcome. And if people need to sit somewhere different, you need to sit in the stands at a section by yourself. I've covered games in stands before. So be it. So Jack, thanks.
I was gonna say, please. Dave, before I'll get out of here. I'll get out of here quickly so someone else can talk. But I'm used to it. I went to a college where we fit 6,000 into our arena, and about 100 people typically went. So I'm used to calling without fans. I'll be mentally prepared for it. I had 4 years of college to get ready for it. But the biggest thing I'll say, I'm just hoping with people have asked me, does this mean people are going to be home? Does this mean that there's going to be more jobs? I don't necessarily know if that there might even be, you could think about it pessimistically too. Like, there might be less, because if they choose to take a radio feed, maybe instead of there being 4 broadcasts for take college football, an ESPN TV, a Westwood One feed, a home feed, a radio feed, you chop that in half to 1 radio and 1 TV. There's 2 less play-by-play jobs right there. So I'm just hoping the jobs maintain, even if we've got to call it off a monitor. I'm following closely what's happening with minor league baseball. I've got a lot of friends in there. I'm praying for all of them because I know there's teams that are, budget wise, it's been tough. I just want people to keep their jobs, and obviously, we're just hoping sports can come back in some way.
I do too, and I hope that if the industry is going to more and more games off the monitor, especially at the lower levels, I pray that for those that are announcers or working in production, that those jobs are still there, and people can embrace and learn the technology, even if it's not at like an ESPN, Big Ten Network, Fox level. So that's kind of where it is, and we'll see. So Jack, thank you again for everything. Feel free to hang out and whatnot, and we really appreciate everything you've contributed over time throughout these Zooms.
No, thank you, Dave. I wish I was there for that very first one with where you guys had some trouble, but it's been all smooth sailing in my opinion. I know it hasn't been easy, so thank you.
Right, thanks. Yeah, the Zoom hijack. Yeah, that never again, right? We'll go next to Chris Black, who's been with us since the very beginning as well. Chris, thank you so much too, and for sharing all your great advice.
Oh, I more than appreciate it. I mean, I think the love fest should continue for Dave and the job that you've done over this. And you talk about, knowing people who et cetera, et cetera. The only way I knew about this for the people that know of me was, through Phil Wedden, who went from the Steel up to the Union. And that's followed him, and I saw who else he's following, and it just kind of expanded out, and I saw your tweets. So thank you so much for what you've contributed, everybody else here as well. And then really, if anything else, it's having something to look forward to. I'm one of the fortunate guys and I always say I have a real job. And I say that because the broadcasting part is so much fun that it's easy to forget that it's a job, because you should obviously enjoy what you do for a living. But my day job obviously has been extremely tough the last 3 months, as so many others are. And this was something to look forward to. And obviously I'm not making money right now for my 2-3 hours. Okay, to be fair, I did a little work. But, you're at your job, but you can look forward to this. This is something you can get better at a craft. For some like me, it's a hobby that pays bills, which is extremely great. I've been lucky enough to do professional sports as well as collegiate, high school, all the way down to U12, U11 soccer, which is a lot of fun. Putting your mic down and yelling, "Hey, the blonde-haired kid, does anyone know his name?"
All right.
But that's always good. And then parents standing behind you. But I'm very fortunate in that regard, but this has been awesome to look forward to. I'm sitting here researching mics. I mean, thank you. I think that was at Vicky that got that back to me. It reminded me I need to order a new headset. So then I'm going out, reaching out to the producer from BCSN because doing games holding the mic piece like this, not good. Also reminded me to contact John Idemiller, which I just sent out. I put my tweet up there because I retweeted something that Scott Van Pelt put out on the UT Athletics. Reminded me, get in front of him again. I want to get on that schedule for the fall, and how jealous I was that someone else got the call out they didn't put any of my games up there. But yeah, all amazingly good, and the contacts has been amazing. So I thank everyone for putting stuff in there. Your information up. I think I've tried to follow as many people as I could and keep up with that as well. But that's fantastic, and hope. And also another guy, Mason Lowry, who's not on here today, which I got to come on. We're gonna try to do podcasts.
Oh,
we're gonna try it.
Love it.
Even if it's just, I see your dad on here. Even if it's just my mom and dad on, his mom and dad, hey, that's a win. That's 4 people that weren't listening before. So I thank everybody, and to the young guys out there, young guys and girls, you say, one thing that I'm gonna start working for a club here shortly. One thing we're gonna do is we're gonna start. They don't know yet. We're gonna start a weekly podcast about our youth club, and at the very least, it'll make some little kids excited. They'll get mentioned on a podcast. At the very least, it'll test our technical skills. We'll try to find a way to do it. Very most, maybe another job will come out of it. But I'm pretty excited to do that. And I mean, you guys are young. You know what Twitch is. So you already have a leg up on the old guys like me that have already pushed past 40. I'm still trying to figure that one out. So appreciate everybody and all the luck as they get into sports going on.
I think what's great about your perspective, Chris, is that you've embraced what's going on right now, and you've dug deep, and you're learning still, with, you know, the years of experience you have both in broadcasting and not, and you've combined those two. And I don't think everybody would do that. And I think it's a great, and you've been great with the learning lessons and sharing advice over the past 3 months on here. And some people might not want to listen, right? But
Yep.
I think it's great to hear from people that bring experience outside the sports media world, and you have both. So we're lucky. And you've talked about, you know, your sales and you know, all that, what happened during, you know, your particular business and how it affected you and how you overcame it. So I think there were a lot of great life lessons that you taught, you know, over time. So I would ask you, you know, one of your final things I want to get from you here is for those of us that are out there, people might watch us on replay that lost their job, they're not working, financially they're hit hard. What would you say to that person about trying to come back stronger in the next coming months or maybe year?
Oof.
No, it's a hard one. I'm digging deep there on you, but I feel like you're the guy.
Yeah. Well, for one thing, I'll go Nicholas Tesla. And I'm sure his quote was probably romanticized, but I believe that is who the world needs ditch diggers to was attributed to when Thomas Edison basically ripped off his technology, his patents. He got strong-armed by him and JP Morgan Chase. Tesla left and became a ditch digger at like 5'6", 100 pounds, to be the best ditch digger he could be. And he got a paycheck. Wasn't much, but he got a paycheck. And that was just the way he knew. And granted, I'm romanticizing, I'm sure, but you know, he was getting his paycheck, number one, and then it recharged his batteries. Well, that was not a pun that was intended. Sorry about that. Recharge his batteries, and we're seeing, you know, what has come off of. And if you don't know the story behind him, there's plenty of books written between Tesla and Edison and the Power Wars. You get your job, get this stuff paid for any way you can, no matter how good, how bad the job is. Granted, I'm lucky. All my jobs are interesting and fun, but not maybe what I picked at the moment. But then still follow your passions, put your passions in around. I'm fortunate, you know, I've got coaching, I have broadcasting. I'm selling in at least a sport that I know for the most part. I worked at a bar as a doorman once, 2 months ago, right before the shutdown, because I knew it was coming. Just do whatever you can to get the money going, but find your passion, just like this was. This is awesome. To get to learn a little bit and connect out there. And stay connected. I think it's a lot of fun. So, I mean, that's my long-winded version, but I think that's what it is. Pay the bills to get by.
Right. But you can do a variety of things, like you're saying. Remember the bar comment that you just made, Colin, who was just on here. Do you remember his story? If people were on that Zoom, he got the Mets job, or he heard of it first by being a manager at a bar.
Yeah, absolutely.
I thought that was an awesome story.
Yeah, if you think about it, and I'm a people person anyways, you walk into a bar, what are most of the people in a bar looking for? They're not necessarily, okay, some are looking to drink heavily. Some are looking for a date. Some are looking for someone to talk to. Some are lonely. Some are, you know, whatever maybe they just want to eat and be left alone. You know, they're reading a book. I mean, that's kind of weird, but
some do.
You want to talk to someone, make connections. You don't have to, you can drink a cup of coffee. Bars are the perfect place for it. And I think about that too whenever you go to a fancy hotel, which I've been lucky enough to do for work and other things too. What are I shouldn't say most, a lot of the people that are working at that hotel, maybe they love in the hotel industry, but the good portion of them, they're there for their next job.
Yep.
And they're talking to you, and you can tell which good, I wish I had jobs to give, but there's so many people you want to hire because of how they're treating people. And then watching their true colors come out when they're getting berated by a guest. And they're just taking it, repositioning it, and dealing with it because the best thing for them in their hotel. Number one, I always like standing up for them because what's the other guest going to do to me? Who cares? But then number two, complimenting them afterwards because them knowing they did a great job of dealing with the difficult parts of their job. I mean, I think that's important to give them the feedback that, wow, you're an amazing person. You took that, you know, you took all that because that person didn't get their new towel on time or whatever. Well done. But I don't know. It's just those little things, you know, make a connection. Someone's looking to talk.
Yeah. During heated conversations, when your back's against the wall, during tough times, I truly believe, and I've said it on here, you learn about people's true colors. And, got to look at a customer service in all those cases, whether it's food or retail. You can definitely tell somebody by what's going on. So, Chris, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I appreciate all that you've contributed to. Keep in touch, okay?
Yep, absolutely, Dave.
And Tom wrote on here in the chat, life is a process of reinvention. No one stays at the same company for 35 years anymore and gets a gold watch. Have faith, keep plugging, and embrace change. I definitely agree with that, Tom. I think that's a good one. I know before we go to Carlo and Perry, I know a fan favorite on here. I know my father wanted to say a couple words. So, Dad, if you're here and can hear me, you wanted to say something to everybody?
You hear me?
Yes. Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Won't take much time.
Well, we have an eternity with each other, so it's okay.
What's that?
You and I have an eternity with each other, so it's
Yeah,
okay.
you think so? A little bit. First of all, I want to say now how much I've enjoyed watching you do this for the last 3 months, and being your father. The people that are on here can't realize how proud I am of you and the bond that we have, and how we are. I'm not only your father, but a great friend, and how much you see how hard I work when I do things. And one of the things that I always done is, this no and yes thing. I mean, I've gotten a million no's in business, and Dave have seen that. And I told him that I love the no's because guess what's coming next? Eventually that yes is coming, and it does. So it's real important that nobody gives up their dream, because as many no's you'll get, you'll definitely get that yes. That is for sure. But anyway, on another note, I'm very proud of you. And I watched Dave a lot preparing. I watched Dave when I've gone with him to broadcast. And I will tell you one thing that I do notice, that I've never seen anybody that is so kind, gracious to everybody that's there. And I think that's really important for success. That never stop making people feel good. Because if you stop doing that, that's a bad thing. People love to feel good, no matter who he is, from the lowest to the highest. And that's really important down the road for all you guys. But I enjoy listening to everybody. Dave, the gloves underneath the bed working in real well. So Dave bought me a glove for my birthday. He's got the same one, so we're going to have a catch. We do play basketball together, believe it or not. His father's nothing's better than a pleasure playing ball with my son, and still be able to play a little bit. So Dave,
you're a great athlete.
What's that? Thank you. Old now, but can still play. So that's the important thing. But in the meantime, you're doing a great job. We're very proud of you, and what you've done for people is just amazing. So keep up the good work. Chris, they were great words. I enjoyed listening to you, by the way. It was terrific, and like the rest of you. So stay positive, and Dave will be looking forward to us going out to more broadcasts.
Well, I love you very much. You know that. You know how much I tell you that off here. And publicly, I'll say to the people on here that a lot what I do and who I'm about stems from you and Mom. So I love you, and we'll talk. We'll keep talking soon before we have a tear fest here.
And we're behind you 110%.
That's the
keep going. I enjoy it. Good luck to everybody. You guys are great.
Thanks, Dad. Bye. He's the best. A lot of those things that my parents instilled with me, I told you from the beginning that I've tried to share on here. And I think what my dad said is what I would tell you guys is treat people how you want to be treated. It's very true. I think some of you know me and have seen me behind the scenes at a broadcast. I treat every single person the same. If somebody wants to come up and take a picture on the set, I'm usually the one holding the camera. I'm not the one in the picture, unless they say, oh my God, I want you and whoever you're with in the picture, whatever. I want people, you go beyond your job and you just be a human being, because that's why I feel like we're put on here. But I'll end that note there. I thank my dad so much for coming on, and we'll go next to Carlo. Hi, Carlo, and you've been one of the guys from the very beginning, so I appreciate that you've been a part of all this.
Yeah, Dave, thank you so much for having these and having us. This is what I've learned these past 3 months is more than I could ever wish to learn in all 4 years of college, to be honest. I mean, this is what I've learned about the industry and talking to people and just listening to everybody. I think a big thing I've learned is everybody has something to share that you can take from. And I really appreciate you having all sorts of kinds of people on, all people from different backgrounds. And I just want to thank you for, at least before these Zooms, I always thought of this industry as being very cutthroat and very me versus you. But what I've learned is a lot of people are there to really help you and help and want to share what they've learned. And so I appreciate you opening me up to that part of the business. And it's been really great.
I appreciate you saying that. And I will tell you that you're not the only one, Carlo, that thinks like that. When I was in college at Indiana, you have a tendency to look over your left shoulder, look over your right shoulder, right, and see, why did that guy get the job? Why did that girl get into this position? Why wasn't I good enough? Or maybe I am not as good as they are. And you don't ever, you're a young guy in the business, climbing the ranks. I've listened to your work, and I'll say it publicly. You're going to have a fantastic future. And I'm not just saying that. I've really dug deep into your tape and all that, and I know what you bring. You do a great job, and there are a lot of great people. And yes, are there a few bad apples? I think I said this early on, 100%. And we don't need to go on and on about that. In life, there's people that are nice and willing to talk to you, and there's others that just like to keep them themselves. It might not mean they're a bad person, but they're just not as outgoing and personable as maybe you and I are. And that's their story. Keep going for it. I really appreciate you saying you learned so much, and that was my goal. And the reason, why I did this, I wanted to share and give back in a way to people. Where when I was your age, coming from Indiana, I didn't really I got some help. And there are some people that played a role in me getting into gigs and getting certain things, but a lot of it I did on my own, and I'm proud to say that. That's not bragging or saying, oh, I was this I was better than anybody, because that's not what I'm getting at all. I just went for it, and I had to learn a lot through trial and error and facing rejection, getting rejected by literally every single place I applied for out of Indiana, and climbing the ranks when quite frankly, I just didn't know who to turn to help me. And since then, I've gotten in with places. I think I've told you over the past 3 months, I've gotten with the jobs, things have gone away, things have come back better. So I've been on all the extremes, and Carlo and others, I encourage you to keep reaching out to people in this industry. Again, some people will talk to you, others might not, but for those that you get the vibe that they're willing to help you, I suggest keep having that relationship. So Carlo, keep grinding, man, and we'll keep teaching each other. All right, we can always learn. I always say this: you can learn. Whether it doesn't matter if somebody's in school, in high school, or out of school, 30 years in the business, we can all learn in some facet from one another. And I firmly believe that, whether you did a network TV game or you were solely a high school guy or girl, I don't think it matters. I think we all can learn from each other. So, Carlo, thanks very much. Keep in touch, and I wish you all the best too. Keep grinding. All right.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you.
Stay healthy. That's Carlo Jimenez. Love Carlo. Good guy. Good guy. Next, another good guy who I've known since I broadcast. Amber, I do see your hand. We'll get to you, I promise. Just going down this order here. I'll get to you. Next guy is Perry Miles. Perry used to be a broadcaster who I met at the Bridgeport Bluefish. And Perry now has segued out of the business, but has a lot to share what goes on in the business from his expertise. Went to Syracuse, and we'll say hello to Perry Miles for his words for everybody today. Hello, Perry.
Oh, hey, Dave. How are you doing?
Great. How are you this afternoon?
I've been busier than a bee. I swear. It's been
Wonderful.
one interesting time after the other between taking on a number of projects. And what really struck me about this particular Zoom meeting, not this specific one, but what's been taking place over the past 3 months, is your kindness and generosity towards up-and-coming broadcasters, because you're fighting for the same jobs or similar jobs that many of these individuals are going for. And you didn't have to do this, and you chose to do this out of the kindness of your heart. So thank you for that, for providing that service to everyone else. I will tell you this, and there are people in this room that have worked with me before. I can be a little bit rough. I can be a little bit gruff, but they know I mean well. I'm sure that a particular individual in here, really appreciates that. He's going on once a week on the regular radio. You know who that is, Dave.
Yeah.
I'm working with another person based out of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. He's a former Syracuse guy. And the idea that I came up with, and it's similar, is radio shows. Because we look at play-by-play, and play-by-play is the best thing I've ever done in my entire life feeling-wise. I swear to you, it feels like a nonstop drug that essentially keeps you going, keeps you flowing back and forth, especially hockey.
Yes.
Especially hockey broadcasting. But what is the most important part of the broadcast? It's not love of the broadcast. It's the business side. Because if you don't have sponsors, no matter how much fun something is, unless you really enjoy it and you don't care about the fame and the gratification in that way eventually, it's going to come down to you spending 1, 2, 3, 4 hours preparing for that broadcast, and another 2, 2.5, 3 hours performing that broadcast. Time, value of time and money. I've talked to Jacob, I talked to Jacob about this. What is the most important thing? It's the marketing part. Getting people engaged with your brand. Getting sponsors engaged with you. And what I've noticed is that, sports, none of us are going to be LeBron James in athletics, right? None of us are going to be that good in basketball, I don't think. None of us are going to be Mike Trout. But we could eventually be the next Bob Costas. We could be that guy. Or Mike Tirico. We could be that person. But what makes them special? It's their marketing. It's the way that they handled situations. I'm trying to remember. It wasn't Kevin Harlan. It was not Dave O'Brien. Monday Night Football.
Sean McDonough?
Sean McDonough, exactly. The way that he handled adversity, he was slightly rough, but the way that he handled adversity should be a lesson to everyone here, whether it's business, whether it's sports broadcasting, whether it's your personal life and your relationships with your loved ones. One of my coworkers, so I own a tutoring business. One of my coworkers, her name is Gina. It was me, her, and 2 other salespeople. And 2 other salespeople got really rowdy to the point that it almost became insult city. Gina could not believe how much control and restraint I showed while that was taking place, because I could have easily exploded and cursed them out. I did not. And as Chris Black mentioned before, it's all about how you handle the adversity that's there. That will ultimately determine whether someone invests in you or not. Kevin Harlan said he wasn't the best broadcaster at that time.
Right.
He was in the right spot at the right time. He had some talent that time, but he wasn't John Madden, right?
100%.
He wasn't Al Michaels at the time. So he got the opportunity.
In your interview process over time that you've been with, that you've gone for jobs or been with, minor league baseball teams or hockey teams or a kid coming out of a cutthroat program like Syracuse, what are some of the things you learned through job applications or competing against? You talked about the competition factor. So what have you learned over time?
Why on earth do I want to listen to this person over another 200 people that are applying to the job? Because I've heard one of my friends say, well, where's the tape? Where's the tape? Where's the tape? And they don't necessarily care about the personal relationship. They could know someone for 10 years, but in one day, one tape changes the view forever. All it takes is one tape. And so I remember sending, and Dave, I'm sure you remember this, I sent a tryout tape to the Springfield Cardinals. It was
it's a great story.
Quite funny.
Share that.
Was laughing. He'll probably remember me forever. But I sent it to the Springfield Cardinals. It was me, and it was a lemon-crested cockatoo on my arm. And it's something like that that will get people's attention. Think about the top personalities in all of sports, news, business, you name it, right? Don Imus back in the day. Steve Levy now for sports, or Len Berman. Name a few others, okay? Rush Limbaugh, I don't know. But the idea is they are bringing opinions, regardless of whether you agree with them or not. They are bringing attention to their opinions, to their issues.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something that I learned too late in the broadcasting. But now I utilize that in tutoring, test preparation, because these kids, they don't want to listen to people that are much older than they are. They want to listen to their friends. They want to listen to people their own age.
Right.
What's going to make you, as a 45, 55, 65, make a 17-year-old listen to you? What would engage them?
You got to think about all these things as you're progressing out the career. I think you're right. And the creativity about your Cardinals minor league baseball app, I think is great and a learning lesson. It tells me about, the Mike, I mentioned this in the last Zoom, the Mike Corey Zoom, where you send all these prospective job people, all these creative ways to keep in touch with them or to make yourself stand out, like you said, from a pile of 200 people. I think that's very, very important. I lastly wanted to get your thoughts before I wanted to get Amber in here and then Matt, and I see Jacob has his hand raised, but I wanted to get your thoughts on the sales aspect, because you talked about, yourself, you're in the tutoring business, you have to generate sales to get profits, all that stuff. So what would you advise, especially for our friends that on here watching on the replay that want to get into minor league baseball? How do they improve? If you could just briefly go through us, not just the announcing part, but maybe the sales, the marketing part of the job that might get them into a place.
Let me preface this, okay, because maybe I'm a little biased when it comes down to this. I was not in the most ideal situation in Connecticut to be able to handle this, okay? With that said, broadcasting and sales should be separate entities when you are working as an employee for a team, because the goal for the broadcast is to market the team, to put, to a certain degree, a positive or neutral spin of storytelling for what the expectation is. But if a Major League Baseball team isn't so good, ratings are not going to be as high, and it's going to be a lot more difficult to convince advertisers to part with their money. Now, something that Chris mentioned before was that, what if you did your own advertising? I've already suggested something similar to Jacob, and he's taking the bull by the horns. What if you had your own business, your own radio show, your own TV show, and you said, okay, I'm going to work for my own because I'm going to get the guests, I'm going to get the appropriate hosts and co-hosts, I'm going to get the appropriate advertisers, that kind of thing. That's very different because you have a passion for your show. And so if I'm looking at this, I would keep, if you are planning on broadcasting in minor league baseball in the future, or minor league basketball, I mean the, what is it now called? Not the NBDL, right? It's not the developmental league anymore.
The G League.
If you're planning on doing that, broadcasting and writing should be the thing, and social media should be the things that you focus on, unless you own your own business. If you own your own business, you absolutely are motivated by that. And once you get enough advertisers, then you can bring in salespeople to promote what you do. And if you have to make an appearance or two to ensure the sale goes through, then you can do that. It's all about branding yourself, making everything engaging. It doesn't matter whether it's a broadcast or sell. If you want McDonald's, why would McDonald's sponsor you? They could sponsor Colin Coward. They could sponsor Dari Noka. They could sponsor Greenberg, Golick, Mike Francesa. They could sponsor anyone they want. Why should they part with their money with you? What cool aspect is there that you can offer? With Jacob's show, I've already mentioned something to him in particular. We'll discuss that offline at some point. But he's got a great platform to do it. If you listen to his show, which is a high school and college sports show, it's a perfect segue. That's the sales component of it. Never waver in your ability to ask for what you want, but don't be too greedy. You become too greedy, they will back out. McDonald's has an endless supply of advertising dollars. Burger King has an endless supply. Nike has an endless supply. Even with COVID taking place, they still sold shoes online. They're still having people pick up burgers. By the way, Dave, I don't know if you knew this, but the news just came out today, and a lot of my friends are not very happy about this. But apparently you can't drink beer in bars in Florida now. They've banned that starting today. You have to carry it out again. All because there were 8,000 plus cases yesterday of COVID-19.
Yes.
Be careful. You can do plenty at home. You can even create your own studio at home and wire it into ESPN Pittsburgh. Okay? Fox Sports Dallas. They have plenty of spots open. If you believe in your selling ability and your sales, you can do it. If you believe in what you're providing and you can get the guests on and you can bring on additional support, Jacob, you're going to do it. You're going to do it. And I know the rest of you in here can.
Oh, thanks, Perry, for your kind words today. I greatly appreciated that. That was awesome. I hope everybody took that to heart. I want to turn now to Matt before we go to you. I know Amber was waiting for a little bit, so I'll get Matt next. But let's first say hello to Amber Vickers, who's joining us. Hello, Amber.
Hello, Dave. How are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you today?
I'm doing just fine. I just want to say that I've been doing all my networking on Twitter because all I have is a Twitter.
Okay.
So I started with the Unwrapped Sports Network in December. In I think April 2019, I think I tore my Achilles, but it was misdiagnosed. So I was walking around on a torn Achilles and didn't know it. I didn't have surgery until actually this January. So I've been kind of just laying at home, laying in my bed, trying to figure out what was next, trying to figure out what my passion was. And my mom, she said, Amber, you know what your passion is sports. I never missed a game. I'm watching everything. I'm doing my own broadcasting from my living room as most fans do. But what was different about my broadcasting is I would go into detail and I would rewind it. And I would go into more detail. My mom said, why did he do this? So why did she do that? And I would go into detail. So that's kind of what brought me here. I found you on Twitter on 4/14/2020. So on the 14th
Wow.
of
Long
April.
time. Let's go back. All April.
Yeah, I went all the way back to April and I DM'd you because I wanted this opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And what's funny is how I made these connections is on Twitter. I got with Galvanize and Laura Oakman, and I talked to her, and then she was like, I know Kevin Harlan. And then all of a sudden you said, well, we're going to have Kevin Harlan on. And then I get on and ask Kevin Harlan the questions. I know you. Laura told me about you. So everything just kind of worked in together and kind of organically happened together. I am starting my podcast for the Oklahoma City Thunder basketball. We got a guy from New Zealand, a guy from Portland, and then me. So we're starting that on Saturday. Yeah. So
I wish you all the best. Now make sure you promote that as much as possible on your Twitter. And I tell you here, and I think many on here would tell you, you guys can create, a Twitter handle for that podcast too. You can promote it both on your personal one and on there. It's just a thought. You don't have to, but also an Instagram and Facebook page, and you can grow these things. I've heard a lot of podcasts that start out like they'll say, oh, we did like 10 episodes, but like only a few people were listening to them. But then when a group of people start to notice, they're going to go back and listen to all the previous content you built up. And I've heard that a lot. I was listening to a lot of podcast stories, and I've heard that a lot. I heard like one particular one like made like 75 podcasts, but it wasn't until like 55 where people started to really take note and they say, oh my gosh, this is what these people do. So I applaud you for starting that. And I'm excited to follow and listen to what you guys talk about.
Thank you so much. I'll be sending you that material. I've been guest on podcasts before. I thought about starting my own podcast, but I met him through Twitter. A guy on my sports network, he tagged me because he was looking for someone to co-host a Thunder podcast with him. And he tagged me. He said, hey, I think this would be good for you. I DM'd him, and that's how it happened. So all my connections have happened through Twitter.
Wow.
Twitter has been such a blessing for me, and I've met a lot of great people through this Zoom call and through other Zoom calls I've had in the past. I've been meeting people and just networking as I'm healing from my Achilles injury. So I can get ready to transition into the next thing. I carry mail. Well, I deliver mail. That's how I hurt my Achilles, delivering mail.
Wow.
I also played college basketball. So I played college basketball back in the day, but I still played actively. But that wasn't the cause of my Achilles injury. It was delivering mail. So I have customer service experience. I'm great with people. So, and then my minor is human relations. Go figure. So all of that kind of tied in together. And I said, I can just bring my personality and my people skills to sports. And I think that would be great. But I just want to thank you for everything you've done. I've been on these Zoom calls as much as possible. I've missed a couple because my schedule got a little crazy, but I just want to thank you for everything you've done. And it was great meeting everyone. And I've always said that, being a Black woman in the sports industry is hard. They tell me how hard it is. Maria Taylor, I got on a Zoom call with her, and she said it's very, very difficult. It was very difficult for her. But I've met some people. I have a mentor. So we'll just see where it goes from there.
I will tell you this, Amber, that in gosh, maybe it was either, I think it was 2012. You can actually probably YouTube it. But I actually called a game with Maria before she made it big at ESPN. It was a Florida State Clemson women's basketball game for a company called CSS, Comcast Sports Southeast, which is no longer in existence. I believe like when the SEC network started, they took the rights. And I guess that company went away. But Maria was a rising star then, and I know how much she's persevered. She's such I'm sure you know this, she's such a great person off the air as she is on the air. At least I hope that she conveyed that, to you guys. And, that's the vibe I got from her. And I think that's one of the reasons too. Yes, she's extremely, extremely talented, but we've talked about this a lot throughout these Zooms, is that off the air, she's so giving, personable, caring. And I think that like who she is comes across on the air. And she's just a dynamic, personality when the lights come on and all that stuff, and a fantastic interviewer. And now she's doing a lot of hosting. And so the versatility is, things that I'm learning from her. When we called that game back then, and I'm still where I am in my career, and she's killing it nationally. It's awesome and so well deserved from her. So keep in contact with her if you can. And I know you're doing that with a lot of people. And I think it's a good lesson that you taught us here is, using, Twitter. So for those that are comfortable reaching out to people in that forum, I feel like today, some people use it instead of an email, reaching out to people. You just got to get, I guess, someone to follow you back to DM them, but or you can, I guess, send them a message publicly. So great stuff, Amber. I hope you recuperate well and stay healthy, and we'll talk soon, I'm sure. Good luck with the podcast, okay?
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it so much.
You're welcome. There's Amber Vickers, everybody, and we'll hand it over to Matt Trust. Hello, Matt.
Alrighty. Hi, Dave. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for your patience. Good to hear from you.
Yeah, you as well. Thanks for everything.
I want to know first, is it a 1 or a 2 on the sides?
Say that again, sorry?
Is it a 1 or a 2 on the sides, like your hair?
Oh, it's a 1.
It's
a
1.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
But
with
the
2.
1. It's now like at a 5, but
I was so happy. It was about a week ago, and I was one of those standing out there at like 8 a.m., like an hour before.
Right.
Like I didn't care. I needed to. I don't know.
I hear you.
But no, thanks for everything the past 3 months or so. This has been extremely beneficial. It's been so much fun to be able to connect with so many great people and just a great platform to be able to learn from each other. A little while ago in the chat, and Dave, you touched on it, Thomas wrote something about the process of reinvention throughout life. And it reminded me of a really quick story that I wanted to tell. So I love Einstein, right? And one of my favorite stories from academia is that the year was 1942, and Albert Einstein was teaching at Oxford University, teaching physics students. And he had just examined his senior quantum physics class. And later that afternoon, after he had given out the exam, he's walking across campus and he has his teacher's assistant with him. And the assistant says to him, Einstein, that exam you just gave out, wasn't that the same exam you gave to those same students about a year ago? And Einstein goes, oh, yes, it was. The assistant goes, same questions, everything. Well, why would you do that? Why would you give the same exam all over again to those same students? And Einstein says, well, because the answers are different. So in a sense, in other words, it's pretty much what got you there might not necessarily, or what got you here might not get you there. In a sense that sometimes in life, I think we have like the same questions over and over again, but depending on where you are in your life, the answers are totally different. And I think just from a broadcasting perspective, from a PR perspective, from a sales perspective, I always believe just the way that I try to go about myself, I believe all that is so true, that through time, it's so evolving. There's constant reinvention and just always trying to be mindful of, okay, I use this to get me here, but maybe now I need to change my point of attack. Maybe I need to do a little bit more critical thinking or thinking outside of the box so I'm able to get to exactly where I want to be with my career and so on and so forth. So.
No, that's wonderful. I wholeheartedly agree with that. And, I think reinvention is, I think, tough to swallow for people too. I think I say this a lot. We're broadcasting, Matt, which I could speak to a lot. And I'm sure you've seen it in your field of study that a lot of us want to be football and basketball announcers, but some opportunities where people have heard me do certain sports and go, we think you might be a really good fit doing field hockey or lacrosse. And, this can apply to if you want to go into PR or PA announcing or play-by-play or being an analyst, and be willing to do all those different things and understand that there is no right way to go about being that guy or that girl in that given spot, I think is really important. So I love that Albert Einstein story. I think that was fascinating. Where I'm sure in your career, you look up to people, and there's been so many different paths, right, to get to where you are and where you want to go. And, how have you measured, success from people that you look up to in the industry?
So I always measure success just in terms of happiness, honestly. How happy am I? How happy are the people around me that I'm working for, that I'm doing a task for? It made me think about the first time I met Doc Emmerich, and anyone that loves hockey knows that Mike Doc Emmerich is the man, and he's just the voice of God if you're a hockey fan, but just has that reputation of a genuine great person. And I remember it was in Hershey when I met him. He emceed our Hall of Fame night a few times. So he would come down about once a year. And when I met him, and at the time I was still kind of torn whether I wanted to go completely the play-by-play route or if I wanted to go the PR route in terms of making it to the NHL, since once you reach that plateau, you have to kind of choose one over the other. And at the time, I was still torn between the two. I asked him about pursuing broadcasting, and I'll never forget him just saying, people like me, we can't do this forever. We won't be here forever. So it is so important that we take the time to talk to anyone like you who's in college that just has this interest and has this passion and this desire to learn, because all we want to do is see this industry succeed and see this industry for the future go above and beyond and have just great people that eventually, when our time comes, fills in for our chair, fills our seat next. So having that mentality of just paying it forward that Doc has and that so many people have and that Dave, that you have, I think that's so important. For me, when I think of success, all of that comes to mind for me. Being in a position where you're able to pay it forward, to help those that want to be next, while also being able to enjoy what you're doing as well in the present.
In the hockey world that you're in and the people that you've connected with, what was there any common story or common trait that someone had there? Let's say that if you define success maybe as to be the top person at the AHL team, or maybe to be the head executive of an NHL team, whether it's a broadcaster or a head PR guy or head business person or girl. For people you connected, let's just take it at the NHL level that got to the top of the North American and the North American game, I guess. How do you think those people got to those jobs? And what could you tell everybody watching this, how they got there?
Being a good person is absolutely key, honestly. I really believe you earn your luck just by being a genuine good person. And I think anyone that I've spoken to at the NHL level, so John Walton is a good resource for me, where he's the play-by-play voice of the Washington Capitals, has been since about 2011. And formerly, so before Washington, he was the voice of Hershey. So he was the voice of the Hershey Bears from, I think it was like 2002 to 2010. And I met him when I was 14 years old. And at the time I was 14, I wanted to be a sports writer. And I just started up my own blog, and he credentialed me just to be able to sit on press row and write about hockey and, just get the early reps in terms of learning how to interview. So I'm 14, 15, and I'm practicing on pro hockey players that are about to be in the NHL in a very short period of time. Those people are the ones that really, you never lose just any thankfulness you have for them, honestly. Those are the people that you want to surround yourself with. And I think anyone in hockey, will tell you the same. There's great people. There are a lot of great broadcasters in the AHL now, where whenever people send in demo tapes, they'll say, hey, this is great, but I noticed you recorded this a year ago and it was a college hockey game. Press row is pretty big over here. Why don't we arrange so you come in, sit on press row, and actually call a hockey game for your demo tape and get some more reps and get some more practice. There's just a lot of great people in the industry. And I think anyone that has made it to the NHL has fed off of that from one another at some point. At some point, they've been a beneficiary of it. And all they want to do now is just kind of continue that line.
No, that's great. And, I think, it takes a little luck, right? A little help from somebody and a push to get to that spot. But how long was John the voice of Hershey before he got the call to the end?
About 10 years.
Yeah. So there you go. I mean,
Yeah.
you got to stick with it too. I think that's, and I guess kind of wait for that position to come open, or, the opportunities, and apply for them and go get them. So Matt, thanks for all, your advice on here and all your stories over the past, really since this started. It's been great connecting with you, and I'm excited to watch your career grow too. I'll be following.
Thank you. It's been a lot of fun. I'm a free agent now, so I was unfortunately one of the victims of just the current situation, getting laid off from Hershey. But I'm excited for what's next. It's kind of cool to be able to take a step back and really evaluate and go through all the different options and all the different possibilities. I'm looking at maybe going back to school, maybe going for a PhD, potentially trying to find a job with a D1 athletics program when it comes to athletic communications, anything along those lines. It's been fun in pro sports, but hell, I'm only 24, so we still got a long way to do this thing. So.
That's great. And you're so young in the business, and you're growing, and look where you are now, maybe getting your PhD or maybe, going back into college athletics. It's going to be fun to watch. I think you have a lot of options at your disposal now. So I'll be following.
Great stuff. Thanks for everything, Dave.
Thanks, Matt. Again, it's Matt Trust, and follow him on Twitter. He's a really great guy. Next is the voice of reason. Jacob Schwartz has been waiting. Thank you for your patience. Perry offered a lot of kind words to you, so I hope you'll repay him back somehow.
I'm sorry. He mentioned my name. I had no idea. I wasn't paying attention. No. Thanks, Perry. I really appreciate that, Dave. I just, I apologize for not being able to come on these last few Zooms. I just want to say thank you again for bringing the sports community together, because quite frankly, as I look around at each and every one of these journalists, because what we have to me is PA, play-by-play, sideline reporters. We have public address announcers like myself. We have people who are just itching and clawing and fighting just to stay or even to get into this business, college students, high school students. And I think someone like yourself who's been able to do something like this, I think it's amazing, from having people like Kevin Harlan all the way to yourself, Kevin Casey, Kenny Albert, just to name a few, I think it's been a really good journey and a wonderful ride. And for those of you who don't know who I am, yes, I am a PA announcer. I have been since 2008, but I recently, I wouldn't say I changed directions, but I decided to become a sports anchor. I host a radio show. We're working on Saturday full time, Sundays at 12 noon. It's called The Voice of Reason. It is a high school and college sports show. And like I said, our friend Perry Miles, I can't thank him enough for those very kind and inspiring words. I've had guests from Phil Martelli, ranging now all the way to Penn State Miami coaches for this weekend. We just got, like I said, we just got word earlier this week, we're going to have a director from Fox Sports, NASCAR. He's going to talk to us tomorrow morning about questions involving, and I heard Miss Vickers mentioning about Black Lives Matter. And I am very excited to mention about the issue regarding Bubba Wallace that took place earlier this week. Artie's going to also talk about the fan attendance, because NASCAR was the first pro sport to actually allow fans to open the doors. Of course, fans will have to get tested and temperature wise when they walk in. But I think it's a great opportunity for at least the world to say, hey, we're in some capacity reopening, but we have to do it at a safe place. So,
Jacob, can you tell everybody, because you can help encourage, you can give some advice here on a very big topic. You went out and you talk about redirection. We spoke.
Yeah.
You went from PA guy, which I think you're still doing when sports comes back, but then you
Of course.
created your own radio show on big market Philadelphia. Hold on. When you created your radio show on 610 ESPN. So if you can tell people how you had that desire and that passion to get in with a big market radio station on 610 AM in Philly, and how you've gone about creating a successful show from scratch. I think it's very important for everybody to listen to.
Well, we were always Voice of Reason, actually, along with my partner Michael Young, who is actually my neighbor. Mike has been wanting to get into the business in regards to photography and videography, and he and I came up with a plan about 5-6 years ago to create some kind of a high school and college platform where we would go out into the community and we would take pictures and we would do personal interviews. I decided, because of all the connections that I have from Philly to Virginia to even down to Boston and even the New England area, decided that, I'd like to go out and try to do that in a national type of platform. Mike would stay back, and then I would take my phone and just do all the interviews on my own. And then I had an idea, and I know I'm not going to certainly say that I'm taking all the credit, Dave. You inspired me to, when I became a podcast 6 months ago, and then for 6 months, I pretty much did what I needed to do. And then you came along, and I'm certainly going to credit Perry as well for helping me out with that, for saying, when can we see you live? When can people hear you? And you put me in touch with, and I know I think he's on here, Jason Springer. Jason, thank you. Jason introduced me to our friend Sam Spiger, Laura Lewis. We had the opportunity to then say, so what do we do? So how do we take advantage of this? How do we make this work? It's been very difficult to get sponsors. It has not been an issue getting guests. Guests that I know and that I trust are people that, these are people that owe me big, and they're friends, and they're people that I enjoy. I've spent time down the road with. I will say this: we're still not even close to being a great show. We're a good show. We could be better. There have been a lot of hiccups over these last. It's been 5 weeks since we aired this show on local radio and national radio, because it's on. You can also, anybody here can 610ESPN.com. We have one tomorrow. Taddy over here, I know I can see you, and I'm trying to get you involved, my friend. I'm going to try to get you down the road, I want to try to. This weekend, I know you wanted to get involved in. We have this Zoom debate. Let me see what I can do. I can't make that promise because we are kind of on capacity because we're an hour show. But anybody who wants to listen, I think they're going to learn that high school and college are just as important as professional sports. Aren't those where people start, I think? And that's, eventually you hear about them and you're like, well, I knew about that guy when he was playing for his AAU team or when he was playing for his Maccabi or.
How did you have the mental fortitude, though, Jacob, to take your show from a podcast to the local and national airwaves? Because a lot of people wouldn't take that jump or that chance, but you did.
Well, I don't know.
Did you say, hey, I want to give it a try?
Well, yeah. No, I think that was something that I thought, what do I have to lose? I've learned from the father of, and I think he is, this is my personal opinion, I don't just think he's Susie Colbert's dad. I think he is, in some capacity, he's the godfather of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania radio. Gene Colbert is not just somebody who had his own radio. He had a dream, and he had a vision. He became this legendary. First of all, the story he told when he was in Louisville, when he was in the Army, and he told me this story about he threw a tape or a record of Elvis Presley, and a month later, he got a letter from Elvis himself. Well, Elvis's manager, but I've always, you got to credit that Elvis told his manager, this guy Gene Colbert or Gene K from Louisville, Kentucky, just took a tape record or took a record of me, interrupted a broadcast while listening to an Elvis show and threw it to the ground and said, this will be the last time you ever hear this garbage. And to me, I've always given people like Gene credit about, if you have a vision, if you have a dream, then you go for it. I've listened to, every day I listen to Mike Missinelli on 97.5, who's considered the highest rated show in the Philadelphia market, despite the fact when you listen to the way some of these people talk, you're thinking, Jesus, I could probably do that. I think anybody, if you have a good voice and you know how to project yourself and you're coherent, anybody could say what needs to be said. And I decided that, when I first did it, I was nervous. I thought, how do I make this show work on the air? How many people can listen? And then little by little, people started following me back saying, I love your show, man. I think it's really, really good and inspiring. I can't wait to see who you have on next. And I think as I continue to have these Sunday shows and possibly Saturday morning at 7 a.m. shows, it makes me say that I think I'm going to make it, or at least I think this is going to work out. And I just want to make sure that I'm doing it. I'm just doing it at a bad time because of the fact of how we are. We could not have had, honestly, a worse time than what we have right now. So well, I thought,
keep pushing, Jacob. Keep inspiring people to go for their dreams and yourself, and don't let.
Well, let me just say one quick thing. I want to say one quick thing before I get kicked off.
No, you're not gonna. Nobody's getting kicked off. I was just gonna say this.
Oh, please.
Don't let the pandemic. Don't worry, I'll let you.
All right.
Everybody's let us speak.
All right.
Settle down there.
Okay.
Like the Belmont, Jacob. It's a long race,
It is. And I want to just say to everybody that's on here, to everybody that's on here, I saw this wrestling movie, and I wasn't a big fan of it. I thought it was stupid. But if I learned one quote, I told a lot of people about this, and that is, don't be the next. I know. Perry said, it made me think about what can you be or who you can be. Let me just say what Bob Ford from the Philadelphia Inquirer said to me when he pulled me to the side during an Eagles game. Don't be the next, be the first you. That is exactly what I have built with Voice of Reason I created the golden voice. I'm the guy who decided to self-proclaim my name and not have to duplicate. I know when I came into this business, I always thought I could be like Bob Costas. I don't want to be anybody else but me. And I want to be the guy who opens the door for high school kids and college kids. I want to be the guy that can pave the way for young broadcasters to be able to be a PA announcer or play-by-play or even host their own radio show, as it was a podcast, a YouTube channel, a Twitter following. I want to be that guy who can make history.
That's great. And now what I was going to say was that don't let the pandemic
No.
be that deterrent for you to try to make your show successful. And I know you have it in what you're doing. And look, I wish you nothing but the best. You know, I'll be following and cheering from the sidelines and maybe calling in from the show from time to time. But you're on 610 ESPN in Philadelphia. And Jacob, nobody can take that away from you, my friends. You have yourself a great day, and we'll listen to you tomorrow on the radio.
Thank you, sir. Really appreciate it. Thank you, everybody.
All right, that's Jacob Schwartz. Next, we go to Stephen Eggert, who has some thoughts. Stephen, thank you for your patience. Stephen and I have worked with each other going back to our Trenton Freedom football days, like minor league, arena league football. Yeah. He is also, I can attest to this, an exceptional golfer himself. Hello, Stephen.
I'm still tired from yesterday, Dave. I can barely get up this morning, but either way, I'm so excited to be here.
You're only ripping the 300-yard drives every other hole, but go ahead.
God, you're pumping me up way too much.
Yes.
I had a couple good holes. That's about it. No, but anyways, I just want to echo the appreciation that everybody's had for these. It's been, I don't think this word has been used yet, but during these times where all the sports and all the work has been taken away from us like that, this has been some form of therapy for us. And it's just so great to have this to look forward to every week and be able to listen, learn, and talk about all this stuff. And I've told you this privately in the past, but I just wanted to echo all of that. And with you, it's been, and with all of you, I was going to say, it's just been really great to hear everybody's story and everybody's different paths to this field. So it's really been a lot of fun to get a chance to see some familiar faces I've worked with in the past and meet some new ones and connect with all of you on social media. It's been a lot of fun. And I also want to commend you, Dave, on the guests. And I'm not even just talking about the Kevin Harlans or Sean McDonough's, but you've had the minor league baseball panel, you had the PA announcer panel, you had the sideline reporters panel. And having worked with not a lot of them, but a handful of those people that you've gotten, I can say you've hit the nail on the head with just the quality of people and the quality of worker. It's not necessarily that they're the most talented, but they've been able to work hard in this industry and have been able to do it by being good people. So it's just a matter of getting very like-minded people here who have just different stories, and just really been so much fun to learn through all of this. And you've hit the nail on the head with that. I just want to offer a couple little pieces of advice as well that we touched upon, but I want to give a little perspective as well. First being, get your own equipment. And I don't know if there's any college people on here, any young people just out of college on here, but whatever, save a little money and get yourself something that if you're going through times like this, you can create your own content, or you can sell yourself as the business by having your own camera, your own. I know I've had a couple things from working with the Freedom with Dave, just a couple things I've had to get as resources when other stuff is screwed up, but especially cameras and microphones and lighting systems. And you can get them for pretty cheap, because one story that I like to talk about with the equipment is I went to Ryder, and during my time at Ryder, they hired Danielle Marshall as one of the assistant coaches, who was I believe 15-year NBA vet. And played with LeBron James, played under a bunch of different coaches, was a journeyman. And I made the mistake of trusting Ryder video equipment. And in the middle of the interview, one of my most embarrassing sports stories was the video camera and microphone completely crapping out in the middle of it. And then just being and then now I've got to rebook the interview with him, get new equipment, test the new equipment, make sure that's all up to standard, learn about some of the new equipment. But it's just, it's so much better if you have your own stuff that you can trust, that you know how to fix any errors, that you know how to set to whatever settings you need to. So that I think there's exponential value in getting your own equipment just to be able to do all that and sell yourself. The other thing too, as Dave can allude to, talking about our freedom experience, there's a lot of good people that in the industry, I'm sure like a lot of you and a lot of you I've gotten a chance to know, but we've worked with some difficult people as well who just made who just like didn't hold a lot of value into what we did, and just probably never would, no matter how hard we worked, and never gave us that sort of gratitude and appreciation. And a lot of those hard times, I feel like I've learned so much more than any of the good times, just because you've had to rely on yourself and your own motivation and your own willpower just to keep going. And the other thing as well, always be willing to learn, always be willing to mentor, and never think you have all the answers, just to be able to utilize any resource and be resourceful. And one last thing I'll say as far as piece of advice, this is probably the best piece of advice I've gotten. And this is like, goes to anybody who's really passionate about sports, who wants to get into this field. I was just one of the things generally that makes a difference between whether you're going to survive in this field or whether you're going to move on. Don't think you're going to go into this for a glorified way of just watching and enjoying sports. You're in this business because you want to create and you want to help people enjoy sports the way you enjoy it. So that was something that really resonated with me during my time with the Thunder, and I carried a lot of these things with me from a lot of these people I've worked with, Dave especially, throughout my time knowing him, a lot of other experiences. So just wanted to conclude by saying thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Dave. This has been so much fun, and I look forward to connecting with each and every one of you in some way in the future and seeing you all succeed.
No, that's wonderful. Thank you for all those pieces of advice, Steve. I really appreciate it. It's been great watching your career blossom from when we worked hand in hand with each other at the Freedom, which goes back to 2014 to now, and knowing what Steve did, running a press box by himself and changing that whole media operation to in what I call like a major league operation for that given sport and where they lie in the arena league sphere. So Steve, you did a great job. And then I wanted to get just one final thing from you while we have you. You also do stuff with MLB.com and MLB Network and all that. What are some of the, I kind of ask people about the common traits, but the men and women that you work with, and there's a lot on here that maybe aspire to work for like a league like you do and a network. What are some of the common traits? I know I asked that to somebody else, but what do you find is how those people and like guys like yourself get into a job like that many people watching this would aspire to? How do they get their foot in the door there?
Well, the one for myself, I can speak to just the idea of being versatile. And I really got into, when I was in college, I went in for journalism thinking I wanted to be a sports writer and stuff, and a reporter and stuff, like maybe even on camera stuff as well. But the more I learned and the more I was able to explore different sides of it, I was able to see my creativity was, I mean, I was a solid writer, I feel like, but I feel like my creativity was much more suited for the video production, graphic design end. So it's really understanding all of that. But as far as other people go, I'm trying to think. You've got to have a creative eye. You've got to be a good person. You've got to be approachable. And you've got to be willing to handle criticism. And
but don't you think that separates, say you have, a couple people in the room interviewing for a job, but you said you take that approachable person, you take that person easy to work with others. I know we're talking interpersonal skills and not necessarily talent on the job.
Right.
But they're going to take them over the man or the woman who's kind of hard to deal with. Am I right saying that?
Yeah, absolutely. You've got to be, I think the key word in all of this is communication. If you're very effective at communicating with others and you're very effective at like getting your thoughts out there and more of an open book and really are prone to more thoughtful discussions and ideas and brainstorming, along with being able to take what anybody else gives you and work on something together to create something. I think the ability to just be malleable and utilize whatever skills you have to combine with many other people, be able to work with many different other people, which goes back to the versatility. It's just a matter of being able to communicate well and combine. It's some sort of combination of the communication and the skill level and the versatility. I personally feel.
I definitely agree with the versatility. And really all the things that you said, but being versatile I think helps you in any job application. And here's the one burning question for you that many are wondering. The most famous golf ball in that case is from, to your left.
My hole-in-one.
Go ahead.
Oh, I got to talk about it. I hate talking about it myself.
Yeah, tell us the hole. Tell us the conditions. I'm curious.
It was Mercer Oaks, the West Course. It was March of 2012. It was either March 11th or March 13th. I can't remember which day it was. I have it in my phone every year to remind me of the day, but I don't remember which day exactly it is, but it just comes up. So it was like 120 yards. The hole was front right. I hit like a baby draw with a gap wedge, 2 bounces, hits the flag sticking in the cup.
Did you go crazy?
Yeah. I blacked out for probably 5 minutes. I had
awesome.
No idea. No, it was crazy because like the only thing I remember after like seeing it go in and like going crazy with it was we were on the next tee and my dad was just like, you realize you took my ball off the green so we could just play the next tee because you were done. It was the craziest. I can't even explain. Awesome. It's just the craziest feeling. But yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of stuff from Myrtle Beach, Orlando, some other local courses as well.
That's great.
That's obviously
like
the most notable one.
Well, continued success with the golf game too and work, and look forward to playing some more golf and learning from you on the links. That's Steve Eggert, everybody. Steve, have a great day.
I try. Lessons are $50 an hour.
All right, thanks.
Kidding.
Thanks. I'll treat you to like lunch or something. All right, here's we see 3 more. So I see Neil, Sean, and Kai want to get in a word before we end this thing. And I know Toddy, just raise your hand in virtually so I know on the Zoom so I see you. So we'll go to Neil Fisher next. Hello, Neil.
Hey, Dave. Hey, everybody.
How's sunny Florida and how are those palm trees doing?
It's hot. It's not necessarily sunny. Anybody who lives down here, it gets hot, and but it's not always sunny. So one thing is, and I'm a native Detroiter, and I went to a boarding school in Ohio. Okay. So I'm not. I certainly would, if I ever have the choice, I'm gonna always take Florida, but it's not always 75 degrees. It gets hot down here, and that can be bad too. But so anyway. Yeah, I just wanted to say, for those of you who don't know me, I know I've seen a number of you on not only Dave's Q&As, but in some other Q&As like the NSMA and STAA. I'm 50 years old, and I actually got into print journalism. I've been working for 30 years. I've covered the 2 local high schools in Apopka, Florida, which is just north of downtown Orlando, for the last 13 years. But I guess you could kind of say I've always had a vision, or even if you want to go further, I've always felt the purpose of my life is, again, the sportscasting. And I'm about halfway through the Dan Patrick School of Sportscasting here in Florida. I'll be graduating next June. So I just wanted to thank everybody. In particular, I know we talked about it, but it's important I feel it's important, just the camaraderie and people, willing to help each other out. And it's important for me because, again, I'm sure this is not the entire print journalism, but my experience is I've run into quite a few people who are just really mean and nasty, and they don't want to help anybody. And unfortunately, I don't mean to be negative, but one of the reasons that I want to get out, that's one of the reasons I want to get out of print journalism. And even after 13 years at the paper I work for, there's still a couple of people who are like that. So I've had stories stolen from me, even to go that far. And, you know, so I'm coming into this in one way. I have a lot of experience in journalism in general, as far as the basic skills of gathering stories and how to present them and how to use vocabulary. But on another way, you know, I'm very young too, because I'm trying to do it in a new medium. And it's really invaluable for me. I know, Dave, you've emailed me a couple of times. That means a lot to me. And just any advice, you know, anybody out there is willing to, you know, take a few minutes to just kind of get to know me. I just can't, you know, express enough how much that is, not only just in the general sense, but coming from a field where people don't always do that. And there are times when I know people tell you don't take it personally, but it's hard not to.
Right.
So you just got to move on. I've been actually very fortunate in the fact the last 7 or 8 years that I've worked for the newspaper, I only have to go in for layout. So I'm only going in and dealing with it 5 or 6 hours a week. But nonetheless, it's still, there is still kind of a residue of it. And, you know, like I said, it's not just the meanness, but Colin Cowherd's talk about this a few years ago. There's just a heaviness. And again, I don't want to say it's like the whole print journalism, but that's been my experience. So just thanks again. And just the other thing is learning, you know, at Full Sail, I've learned so much in the last year, but there's only so much you can learn in the classroom. You have to actually get the experience.
Well, I was going to ask you, what, not to cut you off, but I was going to ask you, from Full Sail, for all of us that probably haven't been in Full Sail's broadcasting, and Dan Patrick, what are some of the things that have stuck out to you in some of those lectures or guest lectures or classes from broadcasters you look up to that you would like to share to everybody?
Well, I would say probably what I've learned that's really stuck to me the most is the outside the classroom lessons, starting with networking. You know, it's like they do a great job as far as the quality of the tangible skills. I've taken just finishing up my second vocal training class. I have one more to go. You know, they'll teach us things like speak from the core, you know, pay attention to your breathing because that affects your pacing, and don't try, you know, you gotta learn to speak at a pace that's comfortable for you. Stuff like that. I have videography. I know how to go out and do a solo shot now, which I didn't know how to do a year ago. Even though I come from a print journalism background, I went through broadcast writing, which is different in some sense. But stuff like networking and social media, which is one of the things I wanted to, I was going to kind of go there is, you know, I never thought about this, but they say, look, nowadays you're not just doing reporting the news, you got to be an entertainer and a performer to a degree too. One of the things you do, and again, I'm very interested in getting into play-by-play. One of the things they've brought out is that you can't just go in, and I know you've talked about this in a couple of your Q&As, you can't just go in and give the stats, like say something like Joe Schmo was batting .320 and he's in a slump over the last 6 games and now he's .290. The audience wants to know a little bit about Joe Schmo's personal life. You know, you don't have to get personal, but if he's got an interesting story about how he met his wife or the birth of his first kid, that's something you got to put in there. And that's really where I think, to your question, that's been invaluable for me, even more so than the actual tangibles of how to develop your skills.
I've never been, you know, stats are there to support a story, right? You know, for those of you that that maybe, or that are watching this live or watching this on replay, if you're just, saying a guy's hitting 310, 10 homers, 29 RBIs just to say it, I mean, they should say something, right? You can say, instead of, if there's a graphic that says those stats, do you need to say it every single time? You may, say, he's batting a little bit above the Mendoza line because, unfortunately he's going through a 5-game, hitless streak, something like that, or a drought. Or this guy's batting above, he's batting above 300, but it may not say this on the screen, Neil, but he's hitting 400 over the last 5 games. I mean, and he's had 3 triples in the process, like something like that, something to, and you could say why. And in my conversations with Scott, he said that, he's just seeing the ball a lot better out of the pitcher's hands. I don't know, something like to that vein. There's always ways that you can craft your stories. And I challenge everybody that's in play-by-play or wants to go into, even if you want to be an analyst, is like Amber was saying, the why. Why is it happening? And I tell myself that all the time. I don't, if a Union soccer player is going towards goal, is it the time to say that that Kacper Shabilko has scored? Oh, here's Kacper Shabilko. He scored 5 straight goals. Can it be the 6th? Yes, it can. Maybe that call sounds cool, but maybe after the fact, he explained, the reason why he scored 5 straight goals is because Kacper says he's doing a lot of dirty running. Or Jim Curtin, the head coach of the Union, says he's doing actually the most running on the team, not just, in the final third, but also in the middle of the pitch. Watch him and how he plays without the ball. So these are some of the things that I'm working on in my game calling to tell the viewer things that they don't see. And especially that's really a TV thing. But even on radio, it would be cool if, if you wanted to go in some of those storylines. So, Neil, that's great stuff. And continued success. And everybody reach Neil. Make sure to put in your contact info in the chat. And so people can continue to reach out for you. And I'll be following you and your endeavors through the Dan Patrick School and wherever your whereabouts may be in Florida and beyond.
Yeah, thanks. And, I'd just like to point out, too, and this is one of the things they do, we actually take a class where we learn how to build a digital portfolio. I just finished that up yesterday, so I'm also there. And, again, like I said, I'm always looking for any critique. I know, I still got some things to work on, but, it's one way to reach out as well. So, but thank you to everybody. And again, just, my point is that, it's just such a different business as far as people being willing to help each other out. And just that makes it a lot lighter for those of us who are, like I said, for me, yeah, I'm trying to get in, but also I'm trying to transition from a field where that's not always the case. So.
Right. Well, hopefully you'll find that people are a lot more helpful as your career is shifting to the other side of sports media. So all the best, Neil. Keep in touch, okay? That's Neil Fisher, everybody. We now go to one of the best Union fans we know, and he's done a lot of work with his podcasting as well. Say hello to Sean McMenamin. Hello, Sean.
Hey, Dave. Thanks for letting me speak here. I just wanted to say thank you so much for these wonderful Zoom meetings that you've hosted over the last 3 months. I mean, you had some wonderful guests. You prepared in great fashion all those times. And I really had a chance to speak to some of the people I never thought I would have the chance, by the likes of JP Delacamera, great announcer, even Kevin Casey, PA announcer, and then Marissa Pill a few weeks ago. So it was really a great chance to talk to those people and then even make connections with all these other great broadcasters in the chat and on social media. So I just want to really say my appreciation for everything that you have done to really provide a distraction with what has been going on in this world and without any sports. But the good news is we're going to get back to sports, and I'm really looking forward to it. So thanks again, Dave.
No, me too. And thanks, Sean, for being, you've hosted me on your podcast with Owen and, you being here week after week means a lot to me. So I do appreciate your kind words and keep going for all your dreams in the business. All right.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much, Dave.
All right, there's Sean McMenamin. Thank you, Sean, for the kind words. And from Germany, perhaps, with one of the last words of these Zooms in the spring and summer session, here's Kai Dombach. Hi, Kai.
Hey, how's it going?
Great. How are you? So everybody
uh,
wants to know, first and foremost, and I know you said this on one of the first Zooms, but your background, the picture behind you. Some people have written to me that it's Harry Potter. Some people have said it's just somewhere in Germany, like a local stream. Somewhere saying that maybe it could be in Japan.
Yep.
Where exactly is it, and what was the thesis of having that background?
So that I took.
There we go.
Yeah. So this is actually a picture that I took. I mean, the reason why I'm using this picture is because my apartment is an absolute mess. So I don't want you seeing that. But this picture is from Nagano, Japan.
Wow.
I took it about 2.5 years ago, and I went to see snow monkeys in the mountains in Nagano. And I remember this was actually the first night where I got there, and it was below freezing and snow was just coming down very hard. But I figured, you know what, I'm here. I love taking photos, and I was actually doing a photo assignment for the place where I work called Deutsche Welle. And it was about snow monkeys. And I just figured, okay, well, let's just go out in the night, see what happens. I'm in this really small town called Yamanochi. And I just saw this family coming out of a public bath. Like, you can actually see the sign for it right there. Like, that's the public bath right there.
Wow.
And they just walked out, and I just went, oh yes, snap, boom, got it.
You got the picture. That's great.
Yeah.
So what are your kids? I love you sharing that story, because your background has been an epic talking point whenever we've seen you come on from Germany. So, what are your final thoughts about this whole Zoom venture and what you've learned, and maybe any advice you have to others watching?
I'd like to offer some advice, like with what Jacob was saying. Just, if you have a dream, just go for it. My dream was really to broadcast the Bundesliga, and this is what I'd been dreaming of for about 8 years. Now, it actually took about 10 years to get here from my very first broadcast way back at student radio in the University of Maryland. I started there September 2009, and I just thought, okay, this is how I start. This is how it goes. So started doing a radio show. Then I did some fill-in for women's basketball, did some women's lacrosse, and just threw myself at anything that I could get my hands on at the radio station. It basically became my second home. And then after that, there were some times where I actually couldn't really work because I had quite a few medical problems crop up. Like, I actually had to have a kidney transplant less than a year after I graduated from university, and it was actually my third one. So yeah,
Wow.
Lots of fun there.
How are you feeling?
I'm doing great. Almost
yeah.
6 years out from the transplant, and I'm still doing great. Still doing
Good.
just fine.
Good.
But anyways, so I figured, okay, how in the heck am I going to cover the Bundesliga? That's my big thing. How do I do it? So I got into this exchange program called the Congress Bundestag Youth Exchange for Young Professionals. And it's for people between the ages of 18 and 24. And it's very hard to get into. But if you are interested in it, I'm actually just going to write it out right now.
Okay.
There we go. And that's where you go if you want to learn more about the program. So I got in, and it sends you to Germany for a year. And you spend the first couple months learning German. Now, I already knew a decent amount of German, majoring in it in university along with journalism. So you spend a few months learning German, and then you spend a few months at universities, and then you spend a few more months doing internships in Germany.
Wow.
Very first internship was at Deutsche Welle, and which led to a job at Deutsche Welle. Started bouncing around a little bit, and then went to the Africa department, and they said, hey, we're going to start doing Bundesliga next year. And I went, sign me up. I'm ready. I've been preparing for this. And so I'm actually in
What was the first
preparation.
game you did?
It was Bayern Munich hosting Mainz
Wow.
back in August of last year. And Mainz actually took the first goal. They actually got the first goal in the Allianz Arena, but then Bayern Munich was being Bayern Munich and, just took control from there.
Were you calling these matches from an audio booth or a studio, or do you ever get to go to an actual stadium?
Unfortunately, we don't get to go to a stadium. It's just a cost-cutting measure because this is still public broadcasting. We're not ESPN. Our big thing, DW's big thing is still news. Like that's what it's all about at DW is news and maybe some radio stuff. But basically, it's like the German version of Voice of America, if you're familiar with that. But basically, I just figured, you know what? I'm supposed to be dead, and not just like one time over, like 20, 30 times over. So I might as well just do what I want in this life. So here I am. Like I'm actually preparing for a broadcast tomorrow. I don't know if you can see that or not. Oh, no, never mind. Nope.
It's like a green screen with your notes. Can we go on?
Well, I was trying to show the paper that said that I'm covering Union Berlin versus Fortuna Düsseldorf.
Oh, that's great. So do you have any plans to come back to the States? I know you've talked about that over the past couple of months about maybe bringing your broadcasting back home, or are you going to stay out there and keep your career going in Germany?
That's like the $1 million question. Right now, I have no idea. Like, I want to reach out to people at ESPN because they're going to have the broadcasting rights next season and just say, hey guys, if you want something, like, you don't have to put me on air. I know there's like 1 million people who are better than I am, but if you need anything like research, if you need translation, if you need photography, well, actually right now I can't really travel because due to my transplants, I'm immunocompromised. But whatever you need, let me know and I will help you.
No, that's awesome. Well, keep all your options open. You know that it's, be versatile and, especially, during the pandemic, you know what's best for yourself and your health. That's first and foremost. And, I wish you all the best, Kai, and we'll talk some Japanese baseball offline and all my experience doing that. And I wish you, all continued success on your next call and your future ones. Okay.
Thank you. Arigatou gozaimasu.
Okay. See ya.
See ya.
Bye. I took Spanish in college, so I could say adios to Kai. Toddy, did you have a question or did you have a comment here? We'll get you on if you did. If you didn't, that's okay, but I'll, no? Okay, no, that's all right, no problem. All right, so with that, guys, that's going to do it for this. It's over 3 hours today, another long session, and fitting for all these have gone 3 to 4 hours, but they've been well worth it every time. And it's really been awesome for me putting these together. And like I said, that they've all been solely about you. I'll tell you again, this all came about from me. Actually, I knew nothing about Zoom, and I got invited to a birthday party for a tennis friend, and his whole family was all over the country. And I was just, not part of the family, but a friend that got on there. And I was like, this is a cool way to connect broadcast professionals and anybody that wanted to talk about sports and sports media and how we'll come back. And I thought about creating something like this. So it evolved from something very, very, very small. And over time, we got some legendary people who I would consider as legends. I know a lot of you would too. But I consider the legends also are people like you guys who have stayed on till the end and been week after week with us. You really, again, I cannot say that enough. And I'm not just saying it just because it sounds nice. I really mean it. Like, if I didn't have anybody to broadcast to, why would I be doing this, right? So it's all about everybody here coming together, learning, sharing from all our different backgrounds, wherever we are in our careers. And just because this is the end of my Zooms for the summer, doesn't mean we can't stop connecting. So for those of you watching this live or on replay, feel free to hit me up on all the social media platforms, and we will stay in contact with one another. I wish everybody watching this and that has stayed till the end, and for those watching on replay, nothing but the best in your careers. I'll say it again. Go for all your dreams. You'll know when you quote unquote made it in your given field of study, and don't let anybody tell you you can't do it just because it doesn't work out in one particular team, outlet, employer. Doesn't mean you can't get in with somebody else. Layoffs happen. A different boss comes in and wants their own people. A different team or a different, hiring manager might want to go in a different direction for no rhyme or reason other than maybe just bringing in someone they like. It happens a lot with athletic directors. They want to bring in their own coach. The same thing can happen for media. So I would say to you, never get discouraged. In my experiences, what I've told you over the past 3 months plus, there are a lot of ups and downs in this industry. Some people make it to the levels that we aspire to, and others, quite frankly, they don't. And, maybe that fire does burn out over time. And again, maybe it's, if ESPN's your destination, CBS, Fox, NBC, the Olympics, Super Bowl, that's great. Go for all those dreams. But I would encourage you that even if you're at the local level too, being the voice of a local team, being a broadcaster in a big time market, being a great sports writer for this outlet that gets your work all over, you still can be successful in that vein too. So don't just go with the theory where I need to be doing NFL football or bust. If you think like that, I think, just my opinion, you might have a tough time longevity in this business. So venture out, like others have said on here, different parts of the business, different things. If you need to do work on the side to supplement your income, so be it. I think we've all done that in our careers and probably still do. So shoot for all your dreams. Don't let anybody tell you you can't do it, because I like to say, as a young guy coming up the business, that I'm living proof that a lot of people told me, you can't do it. It's too hard. You'll never make it. There's no success. There's no money. And I've hit, bumps in the road over time too, but I like to feel like I have that passion, fire, and that perseverance to keep going forth. So I encourage you to keep trucking forward and go for everything that you want to achieve out of life, both in professionally, and also outside of broadcasting. So I'll say it again, don't let anybody hinder your path to success. And with that, that will close my Zoom broadcast journey, at least for this spring summer session. Hit me up on social media to follow, and who knows, we may be doing this again in the future. Have a great day, everybody, and a great night if you're watching this in the PM, and hope to connect with you on social media. We'll stay in touch. Thanks, everybody.